Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is a story about what if the Uzumaki clan finds Naruto council bashing harem part 3. Before I start, please support for more amazing content, and do consider subscribing to my channel and share this video with your friends. This is written by Kokid King 34662 and link in description and support writer. Let's start the video. Training Ground July 23, 52 AFK. Alright Naruto, Hinata, it's time for your final test to see if you both are ready for the exams that are happening in Kiri soon. Hitomi sang with a wide smile on her face. It's been a long hard few months for Naruto and Hinata. They had been training non-stop for these Chunin exams. They had been going on D-rank and C-rank missions so that they could get more experience as ninjas. They were favorites among single moms who even requested the two genin to watch their children. Naruto even brought some of the foxes that he had to watch with them so that the babies and kids could interact. While the original Naruto and Hinata were doing missions, their clones were doing many other tasks. Naruto had clones at the library reading up on history and general skills. He had clones with Sarutobi learning how to be Hokage and meeting dignitaries, and he had clones learning Fuinjutsu with Mito. He had made the most progress with Mito. He had risen to a level 12 seal maker, putting in the intermediate category. Hinata sent most of her clones to her father to learn the ins and outs of running a clan. She had learned how to do administrative work, how to run meetings, and even how to do paperwork. She also spent her time learning poisons, interrogation, and even information gathering. Where she excelled, however, was Iryo Ninjutsu. She was a prodigy of the like the world has never seen. Anatomy and healing just came easy to her. This wasn't to say that Naruto couldn't heal people or that Hinata couldn't make a seal. Both could do the very basics of the other's field. Both genin's battle prowess had also increased as well. Naruto has gained numerous justice under his belt. He however still was terrible at using Dotonjutsu. He is very good at using different clones to help him combine justice to make them stronger, and even more powerful. He also has much better coordination with Hinata, who also has not been slouching. While not being as gifted as Naruto, she has at least 15 different water and lightning justice. She also has vastly improved her bow and arrow skills. She now is able to shoot a target from 70 yards away. I'm so incredibly proud of you, but now you need to fight me at your full strength, Hitomi shouted as she took off her robes and revealed black yoga pants and a large sports bra that covered her DD-cup chest. She smirked at the kids and brought up her hands. I will be testing you both in your coordination with each other, along with how well you do at the main areas of being a ninja. Naruto and Hinata glanced at each other and nodded their heads. Hinata unsealed her wooden bow and got ready to launch the arrows at her. Naruto grabbed some shuriken and placed them in between his fingers. Battle Format 8! He shouted as he got ready to throw the shuriken. Hinata immediately disappeared into the trees and left Naruto to face Hitomi by himself. Now why did you send her away, Naruto-chan? She asked as she stood her ground in front of Naruto, who smiled behind his mask. So that I could do this. He then jumped back and threw the stars. Once he threw the ninja stars, Naruto started weaving hand seals. He then formed a weird plus sign seal and started shouting, Shuriken Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. The 10 shurikens that Naruto has just thrown into the air soon multiplied into 40. This made Hitomi jump away from the spinning star of metal. When she landed, however, she soon had to start dodging arrows that were coming from different directions. Interestingly, Hinata is keeping me off balance so that I can forget about the frontal assault from Naruto. The Hyuga matriarch thought while dodging arrows and shuriken. She soon realized that they were leading her somewhere. Hitomi looked around and didn't see anything out of the ordinary until she landed on a tree and couldn't move. What the? She looked around her body and noticed that there was blood coming from her arm. Damn, when did she get me? She shouted as she tried to mold chakra through her body to burn the poison off. Naruto landed in front of her and I smiled. It looks like sending Hinata-chan was a good idea, huh? He taunted, which made Hitwa grit her teeth in frustration. Alright, Naruto, you want to play? She asked in a sweet voice. She then launched at the boy and started sealing the tenketsu points in his arm. 8 trigram 64 palm, she shouted at the top of her lungs. She hit the final point and smirked. How do you like that? Suddenly there was a cloud of smoke and Naruto was gone. In his place was Hinata, who had multiple water whips formed and ready to strike. Hitomi's eyes widened as she was struck by the solidified water. She then substituted with a log and crouched down on a tree branch away from all the action. Wow, they really have gotten better, she breathlessly exclaimed as she tried to think of her options. I would hope so. We have been training non-stop for 8 months to Bayo. Hitomi looked over her shoulder and punched the figure that was behind her. When the hit landed, Naruto turned into a plume of smoke which shocked Hitomi. Shadow clones? She thought to herself as she looked around with her activated Byakugan. Are you looking for me? Naruto asked as he appeared from behind a large group of leaves. The 4 trigram sealing method is so underappreciated and underused, the small child said with an eerily. Why can't I see you? Hitomi asked as she looked around to try and find the small boy. Well, I knew that your eyes were special and that they could see all the chakra in a body, so I made a seal that allows for anyone with the seal on them to have all their chakra pathways hidden. Naruto explained as he punched Hitomi in the back of the knee. Not expecting the hit, Hitomi buckled a bit but was able to recover and kick Naruto in the chest. This Naruto also burst into a cloud of smoke. She looked around and grit her teeth in frustration. Oh, I also should have mentioned that in this area, I know where everything is. Seals are amazing, aren't they? He asked as he kicked Hitomi in the shoulder. She was able to react in time and grabbed the body and slammed it onto the ground. It too burst into a cloud of smoke. Alright, this is getting annoying, she yelled as she activated her eyes again. Fire style, giant fireball jutsus. Suddenly, multiple large fireballs started flying out of the trees and were careening towards the black-haired women. She saw the fireballs and started jumping to avoid them, but found that Hinata was launching arrows at her in between the fireballs, making it so that if she avoided one of the flying objects, she would definitely get hit by the other. Lightning style, extreme echo wave. Naruto slammed his hands together and sent a shockwave through the air at almost subsonic speeds. The wave hit Hitomi square in the chest and knocked her down to her knees. Alright, I give. You and Naruto win, she shouted in between groans of pain. She slowly looked up and saw Hinata and Naruto smiling at her. She sighed and chuckled a little bit as she held her chest. Hinata-chan, maybe you should heal your mom, Naruto commented as he took of the seals around the trees. Hinata nodded and went to heal her mother properly. After 20 minutes of healing, Hitomi was back and ready to go. They jumped from tree to tree and returned to the Hyuga compound. When they entered the compound gates, Hayashi and Hizashi were already there waiting for them to return. Hizashi had a first aid bag ready for any injuries, but then he noticed that the only one that was injured was Hitomi. How did it go? Hizashi asked while checking over Hitomi, who smiled warmly. They did very well. They should have no issues in this exam, she said with a large amount of pride in her voice. I'm pleased to hear that you think both of them are going to do well in the Chunin exams today. Hayashi spoke in an even tone with a neutral face, but if you were looking closely, you could see a slight smile. That's wonderful. I'm happy to hear that you think that they will be able to perform well. Hizashi smiled at the two children who smiled back at him. You know, Inochi has been asking for us to go to the park and meet his children. I heard that some of the other kids will be there as well. Would you both want to go? Hizashi asked the children, who nodded their heads. Hayashi watched the scene with interest. He remembered the first time he met Minato and Kushina and was very interested in what would happen when Naruto and Hinata meet the other children their ages. He glanced over at his wife, who had a very wide smile on her face. Alright, let's get going, she said as she led the children out of the compound and towards the center of Konoha. Naruto looked around and slowly grew more and more timid as he watched the people go by. While he wasn't as scared as Hinata was, he still didn't like being around new people. He would often hide behind the leg of whoever was around. As the group walked, more and more people started taking note of them. There were several people who were looking strangely at them. Some of the single mothers waved at the children who walked by and others sneered at them. I wish they could just see me for me, he groaned as he followed Hitomi, who shook her head. If only they knew, she thought to herself as they walked past a particular set of glares. After a few more minutes of walking, they walked up to a large park. There were multiple sets of swing sets, slides, monkey bars, metal benches, and a large sandbox full of toys. There was even a large flower box full of different annual flowers. When the group walked into the park, Hitomi discreetly activated her Byakugan to find Inochi. Once she found him, they walked over and found him next to Choza, Shikaku, Shibi, and their wives. They also found Sim and Hana playing with some stray dogs. Well, look what we have here. Inochi smiled warmly at the Hyugas who walked over to him. Hey Inochi, I know you've already met Hinata, but I wasn't sure if you've met Naruto yet, Hitomi explained to the tall blonde man, who nodded his head. Yes, I've met Naruto before. Hokage-sama wanted us to meet, he said as he waved to Naruto, who waved back. I don't know if he's met the others yet. He walked over to the other clan heads and waved them over. Naruto looked at all the people around and started to feel a bit overwhelmed. He started to shake lightly and went to hide behind Hitomi's leg, but was stopped by surprisingly Hinata, who grabbed his hand. If I have to suffer, then so do you, she thought to herself as she grabbed his arm and rooted him in place. Shikaka and the others watched this happen and internally frowned. They all walked over and smiled at the two children. Why hello. You must be Naruto-kun. I've heard so much about you from Hana. Sim smiled at the small child, who nodded his head back at her. So this is Kushina's pup? Wow, this village messed him up. Naruto looked up and saw a woman around 58 with long wild brown hair standing in front of him. She had a very athletic build and had 32C breasts. She had red markings going down her face and wore red lipstick. Hello, he said quietly. Can I trust them? I don't really know them. Yes Kit, you can trust them. I know who they are, Akari said in a soothing voice which seemed to put the blonde at ease. Wait, aren't you the Inuzuka clan head? He asked as he realized who was in front of him. Yes, I am in fact the Inuzuka clan head, she said proudly with a feral grin on her face. That means you work with animals, right? That's really cool, he excitedly shouted, which made everyone smile. It seems that he gets out of his shell rather quickly as opposed to being reclusive all the time, she thought to herself as she smiled and patted the child's head. Yup, I work with animals all the time. She smiled at Naruto, who smiled back. If you want to, you can meet the kids. They should be over there somewhere. Okay. Come on, Hinata-chan. He shouted as he grabbed her hand and pulled her towards the swing set. When they reached the swings, they saw a small boy with a puppy in his jacket pushing a girl with blonde hair and a purple dress on the swing. Can you push me fast? The girl yelled as she pumped her legs on the swings. Gee, Zeno-chan, I'm going as fast as I can. The boy shouted as the dog yelped. Hey guys. My name is Naruto. Naruto said as he waved to the kids, who looked at him for a second. Huh. Oh, Kiba was about to answer but got hit in the stomach by the swing when Ino jumped off of it. Hinata immediately ran over to him and made sure he was okay. Kiba, he said as he groaned in pain. Oh, I'm Ino. My daddy told me that I should be friends with you. Do you want to be friends? She asked with a smile on her face. Naruto started smiling widely and nodded his head. Yeah. Let's be friends, that would be awesome. Okay, let's go meet each other. Be warned, one of them has bugs in them, she said as she led Naruto away. Hey guys. I got a new friend for us, she yelled at the group in front of her. Troublesome, what's your name? A boy with spiky black hair asked. He was around 3 feet 4 inches and was lying on his back watching the clouds. Hi, I'm Naruto Uzumaki. Naruto shouted with a wide smile. Shikamaru Nara, Choji Akamichi, a chubby boy with swirls on his cheeks, said as he ate some cookies. I'm Sakura Haruno. Too, she waved to the boy. She had light pink hair and green eyes. She was wearing a green and white dress with a red bow in her hair. I'm Shino Abirambi, it's nice to meet you, a tall boy wearing a trench coat and sunglasses said. It's really nice to meet you guys. Naruto said as he walked over to the group. Before he could sit down, he saw 2 people he thought he knew from a long time ago. Ten-chan, Lee-chan. He yelled as he pointed to 2 children playing in the sandbox a few yards away. Naruto-kun? A girl with 2 brown buns in her hair asked as she looked around for her friend. When she found him, she grabbed the boy next to her arm and ran towards the blonde child. Naruto, I thought you left us. We haven't seen you in years, she cried as she hugged the child. Yash, Naruto-kun, it's good to see you again, Lee said with a bright smile on his face. Guys, these are my friends from the orphanage. This is Rock Lee, and this is Tenten. Naruto introduced to the group, who all said hello. By this time Hinata and Kiba had returned and were sitting with them. We should play a game, Lee suggested. Most people nodded their heads with the exception of a lazy Nara, who groaned. What should we play? Sakura asked the group while still looking at the flowers she was playing with. Oh, I know, let's play Duck Duck Goose. Naruto shouted as he stood up and moved everyone into a circle. Yeah, that sounds fun. Lee shouted as she moved his arms up into the air. And so the game went. Naruto started running around the circle. He patted everyone on the head until he stopped on Shikamaru, who ground and got up to chase Naruto. He wasn't able to catch him, so he had to go. The game was going normally until they experienced an interruption. Well, I guess the loser squad has gotten bigger. Naruto had felt the presence of Sasuke a while ago, but didn't say anything, hoping he would leave them alone. Unfortunately, he was wrong, and as soon as the black-haired nuisance started talking, his anger increased. What do you want? He stood up and looked at Sasuke, who had a smirk on his face. Well, if it isn't the dope. Sasuke taunted, which made Naruto's blood boil even more. Loser with losers. I guess it fits. He sneered at the blonde, who took great offense to his new friends being called losers. I said, why are you here? I thought your clan didn't associate with us peasants. Naruto spat with quite a large amount of venom in his voice. You're right, why would I want to be around nobodies like you and Pale Eyes over there? Sasuke pointed at Hinata, who frowned at the insult. Hey, can't you just leave us alone? Kiba shouted at the Uchiha, who laughed at him. Oh, and what are you going to do about it? Huff, flea boy. Sasuke pointed and laughed at Kiba, who growled at the boy. Naruto was losing his patience. He was about to get up when he felt something on his arm. He looked over and saw that Hinata was holding his hand. He looked at her, and she shook her head. What's wrong, Blondie? You look mad. Maybe you should go tell your parents. Oh, wait, Daddy told me you don't have any. Hinata then proceeded to let go of Naruto's hand, and he shot up like a cannon. He then punched Sasuke square in the jaw. Ah! Sasuke yelled as he flew through the air. After a few seconds, he landed on the ground and groaned in pain. 5 older-looking Uchihas ran over to investigate when they saw Sasuke lying on the ground with a broken nose. They looked and saw Naruto sit back down and continue to play the game with the other children. Sasuke-sama, who did this to you? One of the teens asked the 4-year-old. T the blonde boy, Sasuke cried out as he held his bloody nose. The 5 Uchihas went over to the circle and grabbed the back of Naruto's collar. They then lifted him and threw him at a tree. Naruto didn't have time to react, so he hit the tree and fell to the ground. Naruto-kun! Hinata shouted as she went over to help out her best friend. Well, if it isn't the demon child. One of the teens spat on Naruto and kicked Hinata away from him. Wow, and you have one of those pale-eyed freaks helping you too, disgusting, he said as he pulled a kunai and tried to stab him. When Naruto saw the kunai, his eyes widened and he sprang into action. He kicked the teen in the groin and went to go help Hinata, who was also dusting herself off. Hinata battle strategy number 1, he whispered. She nodded her head and stood next to him. What are you two going to do against 5 Uchiha? A shorter teen asked as he activated him 2-toned Sharingan. He then started going through hand seals. Shoot, he's gonna launch fireballs in a park? He thought to himself as he looked around. Fire style, fireball jutsu, shoot! Naruto yelled as he ran towards the circle of kids who were now petrified. He started going through hand seals and slammed his hands on the ground. Earth style, rock wall. A wall of earth launched into the air and stopped the multiple fireballs that were heading towards the however couldn't rest as he jumped up and stood in front of the now frightened children. You guys have to run! He shouted to his friends who didn't move. Fire style, flame launcher. A torrent of flames came from the left side of the wall. Naruto's eyes widened as he went through hand seals himself. Water style, downpour. Water came pouring out of the sky and doused the flames that were coming towards him. Naruto then made 6 clones to grab the kids and get them to safety. How could you do this in a park? He shouted at the teens who growled at him. 2 of the Uchihas ran towards him and started to throw kicks and punches which Naruto expertly dodged and parried. His eyes widened as he looked at the third who was getting ready to launch shuriken at him. He looked around and smirked when he saw Hinata doing hand seals. Water style, water vortex. A large vortex started to materialize out of the water that Naruto has summoned from the sky. The Uchiha's eyes widened and they started to scream. Naruto smirked and shushined next to Hinata. We won't go down that easily, the oldest Uchiha yelled as he started doing hand seals for a fire justice but was silenced by Naruto who clapped his hands together. Lighting style, lightning rain. 5 lightning bolts came down from the sky and struck the wet ground. This had the desired effect and caused all 5 Uchihas to get electrified and go into shock. Once the smoke cleared, Naruto high-fived Hinata who checked him over to make sure he was okay. What in Kami's name is going on here? Both children looked up to see all of the clan heads running towards the scene with their children. They also saw a squad of ANBU with the Hokage and Fugaku with the Uchiha police force. Naruto Uzumaki, Hinata Hyuga, explain yourselves, Sarutobi ordered at the 2 4-year-olds who nodded their heads. Hokage-sama, Naruto, and I were playing with the other clown heirs when the Uchiha walked over and started bullying us. Naruto asked him why he was here and started insulting us more. Kiba told him to leave and he didn't. Naruto was going to hit him, but I stopped him. The Uchiha noticed this and commented something about Naruto's dead parents. I then let go of Naruto, and he then proceeds to punch the Uchiha in the nose. Hinata stopped to catch her breath and looked at the other in the park. All of the clan heads minus Fugaku was looking at Naruto with fondness in their eyes. They were remembering how another blonde stepped up and protected them from a certain Uchiha in their younger days. Fugaku was fuming that Sasuke and his Uchihas got beaten up by Naruto and Hinata. He clenched his fist together and let out a small amount of Ki which got the response of Ki from Naruto. Once the Uchiha was unconscious, 5 older Uchihas came and started to attack Naruto and me. We then proceeded to defend ourselves when one of them launched fireballs at the other heirs. Naruto sprinted and put up a rock wall to stop the incoming fireballs. Naruto then defended the heirs until he created clones to escort them away. I went to make sure that all of them were healed before I went back to see Naruto finishing the fight. I launched a water vortex at them and Naruto sent lightning careening towards them which caused them to get electrocuted. Hinata finished explaining the story. She shivered to herself as she felt the explosion of Ki from the heirs' parents. Fugaku, take your clansmen away! Sarutobi shouted at the man who was glaring at Naruto. Hokage-sama, they did nothing wrong, he said as he walked over to Naruto and pulled out handcuffs. We need to take away the demon here. He activated his Sharingan and tried to put Naruto under a genjutsu but Naruto punched him in the groin. Fugaku! If you are finished making a fool of yourself, I said to take away your clansmen and put them into prison. Do it before I have ANBU take them to TI. He shouted at the man who was now trying to shake off the hit. Hi Hokage-sama, he said through gritted teeth. He and the rest of his clansmen carried the injured teens away from the park and started walking towards the Uchiha district. Now, as for you two, Sarutobi looked at Naruto and Hinata and steeled his gaze. Hinata squirmed under his gaze, but Naruto held firm. We didn't do anything wrong, Naruto yelled as he balled up his fist. Those jerks were going to hurt my friends. I'm not gonna let Sasuke or anyone hurt me, friends, so if you have to punish me, do it, he shouted much to the surprise of everyone. Shikikaka looked at Shibi and Hayashi and smiled at them. That's exactly what Minato said when Fugaku was bullying us, he thought fondly while looking at his best friend's son. Yeah, Sasuke team is a big meanie, Sakura shouted as she ran over to Naruto. Sakura's right. They all suck, Kiba chimed in as he ran over to Naruto. Soon the others were saying other things about how the Uchihas were the worst clan in the village which made all the ANBU and parents laugh. Well, I can't punish you all, just don't do it again. If it happens again, flare your chakra and have ANBU report to the scene. Now go run along and continue playing, Sarutobi said with a kind smile on his face. All the children soon started running towards the sandbox and started playing. You know, Hiyashi spoke as the group watched the children play. That's exactly what Minato said to you when Fugaku was bullying us at the academy. I can attest to this, Shibi said with a small smile on his face. That is his son after all. And I'm sure he's gonna keep the family tradition of messing with the Uchihas alive and well. Shikaka chuckled softly while keeping a closer eye on the kids. I'm starting to think that maybe Tobirama was right when he said a good Uchiha is a dead one, Sarutobi said quietly to himself, but still made everyone present laugh as they continued to watch the children play on the playground. Deep under Konoha at the dead of night, is everything set for Kirigakure? Danzo asked as he looked at a man with an orange spiral mask. He had short brown hair and was wearing a black robe with red and white clouds on it. Yes, Danzo, he said as he looked at the old warhawk. His voice was deep and smooth. He moved his hand and folded them onto the table. I am suppressed that you are going to let your comrades die though. One must sacrifice the few for the good of the many. Danzo emotionlessly said to the masked man. Just make sure everything on your side is ready when the time comes, the man said as he got up from his chair. There's a council meeting in 3 weeks' time when the plan is scheduled to commence. You know where to go. The man then disappeared into a spiral portal, leaving the old man in the room alone so that he could contemplate his thoughts. Kakashi Yugao, and Naruto's apartment on July 28, 52 AFK. It was finally the day for Naruto and Hinata to leave for the Chunin exams in Kirigakure no Sato. They had been training hard for the last 8 months and thought that they were thoroughly prepared for it. Do you have all your supplies? Mikoto asked Naruto as she checked over his bag for the 3rd time in the last hour. Kaa-chan! Naruto shouted as he tried to grab his bag. She had been at his apartment with Itachi all morning trying to get him prepared for the 2-week trip to Kiri. She had been packing his weapons into the seals that he had made the night before. Itachi was helping him pack all of his other things like clothing, sealing materials, and foodstuff. Naruto-kun, it's my job to make sure you're safe and have all your stuff. She shouted as she grabbed the bag. She dumped it all onto the ground and started going through all the blonde's things. How many packs of underwear do you have? She asked as she counted all of his shirts. 10. He whined as he sulked in the corner. Mikoto looked up at Naruto and raised an eyebrow at him and started walking towards his closet. Why do you only have 10 pairs of underwear? You'll be gone for at least a month. She shouted at the child who smirked back. I made a self-cleaning seal that I applied to all of my clothing. When I'm done using them, they clean themselves and even fold themselves sometimes. He shouted at the top of his lungs. But wait, don't you need to apply chakra to seals before you can use them? Itachi asked while he stood in the corner of the room. Yes, but I made a small chakra battery seal that I integrated into the seal array. It was a bit hard to get it into the 4-trigram seal structure, but it was nothing that I couldn't figure out. He nonchalantly shrugged his shoulders as he picked up all the stuff that Mikoto had taken out of his back. Chakra batteries are huge seals that need to be pumped with chakra every 2 weeks. Even the smallest ones are huge in size and complexity. How in Kami's name did a 4-year-old compact it enough to fit it in the 4-trigram sealing structure? She thought to herself as she looked at the underwear and all the other pairs of clothes that were out. But Naruto, most people have to use a combination of seals to make a chakra battery. She explained to the boy who nodded his head. Yeah, I know, and they all suck. He shouted at the top of his lungs, which startled Mikoto and even Itachi. The way that everyone makes them is so inefficient. They require all of these 6 and 8 trigram seals when honestly if you know where to get rid of the bloat seals, can make a nice circuit all in the 4 trigram seal method. It makes the battery a lot smaller and with a small regulator seal, a lot more efficient as well. He looked up at Mikoto who had her mouth wide open. Hey, where did you learn seals? Naruto asked the Uchiha who smiled back at him. Well, I was on a team with one of the greatest seal makers of the last 20 years. He taught me the basics of the art, but I decided to pursue other ninja arts. She explained to the child whose eyes widened. That's right. He shouted as he lifted off his shirt and channeled chakra into his stomach to make his own seal visible. He was a genius to make my seal. I mean combining the 8 trigram method with the Shiki Fujin seal, creating some of the smartest and strongest chakra regulator seals ever, and creating some of the most efficient chakra integration seals ever on a newborn baby. That's insane. He shouted as he gushed about the seal on his stomach. Yeah, she sighed as she looked at Naruto fondly. He was incredible. Naruto sensed the emotions in the room and frowned. He knew that there were some bad emotions connected with the yondaime, but with Mikoto, those feelings were even more intense. He walked over to her and gave her a hug. After a few minutes of hugging, Mikoto let go of Naruto and smiled at him. He would have loved to meet you, Naruto. She whispered into his ear. You would have made him so incredibly happy you don't even know. You would have even been able to meet his wife. She also would have loved to meet you. She kissed him on the forehead and continued to go through all of his clothing. Naruto shook his head and frowned. Why would he have met me? I mean, Jiji-sama said that my parents died during the attack. So how would he have even known me? You know, come to think of it, we look really similar. He shrugged his shoulder and went back to repacking all of the clothing. Naruto seal. You know he's gonna figure it out sooner or later, Mito said in between sips of coffee. Yes, I know that. Akari shouted as she paced around the room. So then why are you so stressed about it? The elder woman asked the immortal spirit. Because I don't want to have to tell him. I don't want to see the look on his face when he realizes that I killed his parents. I don't want to see the look on his face when he realizes that I'm the reason they are gone. She ragged at the Uzumaki, who took a long sip of her coffee. Listen, you've been in Naruto his entire life. You know how he thinks. You know how he will perceive the situation. You know he won't hate you. Hell, he might not even understand the situation. While that is highly unlikely, he is a 4-year-old. She explained with a hint of sageness in her voice. She placed her mug down on the table and let out a long sigh. Look, I wish things were different too. I wish that Kushi-chan and Minato-kun were still alive. I wish that Tsunade had more than one child too, but those things cannot happen now. Dan is dead, the Uzumakis are dead as far as I know. I think his 3 older brothers might have had kids, but they would be so scattered around the world that it would not matter. The best thing we can do is be there for him when he does figure it out. She looked at Akari, who stopped pacing and was looking at the picture of Minato, Kushina, and baby Naruto after he was born. She stood up and walked over to her to give her a hug. It'll be okay, she whispered to the fox spirit, who cried into her shoulder. It'll all be okay. Outside the seal. After a solid 25 minutes, Naruto, Mikoto, and Itachi walked out of the apartment with all of Naruto's stuff loaded into sealing scrolls. He had a total of 4 scrolls that had their contents labeled with different kanji. The first scroll had the kanji for clothes. The second scroll had the kanji for weapons and carried all of his weapons and sealing supplies. The third scroll had the kanji for food and carried all of this food and cooking supplies. The fourth and final scroll had all of his sleeping supplies. So, Naruto-kun, are you ready for your first Chunin exam? Itachi asked the boy, who nodded his head yes. Yeah. He shouted as they walked down the street. Hinata-chan and I are sure ready to totally ace these exams. I mean, we've been training really hard for the last 8 months. We've totally got this in the bag. He moved his arms behind his head, confidently smiled. Naruto-kun, these people will have been training for years. Some will be 2 times your own age even. Are you sure you can do this? Mikoto asked in a worried tone. While she knew that both Naruto and Hinata were capable ninjas, they were still children. Ka-chan, we'll be fine. Plus, if anything happens, one of the foxes will come back and tell you. He tried to ease his mother's worries as they walked. Mikoto looked at Naruto and sighed. Mother, I'm sure they both will be fine. They are Chunin in strength and will hopefully have the necessary experience necessary for them to pass. Itachi neutrally added in. Yes, Sochi, I know. I just can't help getting this feeling. She cried in the middle of the street. When do I meet my Jonin sensei? Naruto asked when they got to the Hyuga compound. Mikoto suddenly stopped walking and looked at Naruto with a raised eyebrow. What do you mean? I thought Hitomi or I was going with you, she yelled at the child, who shrugged his shoulder. Jiji-sama said that it was Danzo who gave us a sensei, Naruto replied from his spot on a bench near a number of white lilies. Fuck. She thought to herself as she walked up to Naruto and sat down. Naruto-kun, I need to tell you something. Naruto immediately knew that something was wrong and looked at Mikoto with focused eyes. What's wrong? Don't trust this man. Don't trust Danzo or whoever he gives you as a sensei, said sternly. Yeah, I know. He's a jerk who is always mean to me. And some of the stuff he says doesn't make any sense. Why is he so focused on the roots of the village? I sometimes listen to his and Gigi's conversations and they aren't very good. They always talk in a code that I can't figure out, the 4-year-old blonde said with a frown on his face. I don't like him and I will figure it out, but I'll do that when I get back. Good, you should let me worry about Danzo, she said with a smile on her face. For now, let's worry about your exam with Hinata. Yeah, but they aren't here yet, they are at the west gate. Naruto smirked at his mother figure, who had a tick mark over her head. So then why didn't you say anything when we left the apartment? She asked in a scarily sweet tone. Well, I thought that you knew that. He smiled at her while forming the ram hand seal to shun Shin away. I knew I shouldn't have taught him how to do that. She shook her head as she looked at where Itachi had been but also saw a cloud of smoke. She groaned and disappeared in her own cloud of smoke. Deep under Konoha. J.E. report immediately. Suddenly a large man wearing a white mask appeared in the darkness of the cave. He was around 5 feet 7 inches and had long blonde hair. He wore the traditional ANBU attire, and had a short sword strapped to his right hip. What is it you require of me, Danzo-sama? He said to his leader, who wore an emotionless mask. I have an assignment for you, the old warhawk stated as he handed him a vanilla folder. You will be posing as Jonin Sensei to Naruto Uzumaki and Hinata Hyuga. Your objective is to get as much information on them as possible. Sarutobi has been rather secretive with them and I want to know their strengths and weaknesses. Make sure you are to be discreet, and they don't know Toy are doing it. Danzo ordered to the submissive shinobi. Jei nodded his head and took the folder. He read the contents and Admiralty frowned. All of the following information is redacted and ranked in SSS rank secret. Ninja identification profile. Name Naruto Uzumaki. Age 4. Date of birth October 10th, 47 years after the founding of Konoha. Rank Genin. Skill level redacted. Teacher redacted and redacted. Parents redacted and redacted. Jutsu's list redacted. Bloodlines Jinchuriki of 9 tails redacted. Bio redacted. Ninja identification profile. Name Hinata Hyuga. Age 4. Date of birth December 27, 47 years after the founding of Konoha. Rank, Genin. Skill level, redacted. Teacher, redacted and redacted. Parents, Hayashi Hyuga and Hitomi Hyuga. Jutsu's list, redacted. Bloodlines, Byakugan. Bio, redacted. Jei looked from the folder to Danzo and tilted his head to the side. Danzo-sama, it seems like all of this information is redacted, he said, which made the ki in the room spike. Jei, I am very well aware of that, Danzo said in a rare moment of outrage. He took a second to calm down his rage and steady his breathing. That is why I need for you to find out as much information as possible on both. I need to know if they are a threat and if they can be manipulated to my side, he said with a small smile. You are to report me in the dead of the night every night. I want to know everything from their mannerism, ideals, knowledge. I want to know every single solitary thing I possibly can know about them. Is that clear? He ordered to the man kneeling in front of him. Hi, Danzo-sama. Jei nodded his head and placed his fist over his heart. Good. Danzo walked in front of Jei and removed his mask. You will now be known as Eiji Kano. You are to report to the western gate immediately. They should be waiting for you. Hi, Danzo-sama. The now named Eiji disappeared in a cloudless shunshin, leaving Danzo alone in the center of his base of operations. The elderly man smirked to himself and started walking towards the northern corridor of the large facility. A few minutes a strange black and white creature appeared from the ground. It wore a black cloak that swallowed the creature's entire body in darkness. Around the creature, the forehead was a headband that had an image of a black setting sun on it. The creature looked around and stepped out of the ground. We should report this to Mistress, the black half of the creature said. Though I do find it weird that the one who names himself after a man long dead has such strange acquaintances. Hi, she will be most pleased to hear that her puppets have been on track, and you're right. His acquaintances are very strange, the white half said as it looked around the cavern. After a few more seconds of looking around, the creature disappeared back into the ground. West Gate. Eiji Kano appeared in a puff of smoke wearing the standard Jonin outfit. He looked around and saw Naruto and Hinata talking to Hitomi and Mikoto. Naruto looked at the man and narrowed his eyes. The child moved his hands behind his back and started making hand signals. Bad chakra, don't trust, something going on. Mikoto and Hitomi immediately went on guard. They eyed the strange-looking man but didn't stop him from walking towards the kids. Are you two Naruto and Hinata? He asked them both. Both children nodded their heads and stepped forward. Hi, I'm Naruto Uzumaki and this is my friend Hinata Hyuga, Naruto said quietly. He's a bit shy around new people, interesting. The spy noted as he smiled at the children. Alright, well I'm Eiji Kano and I will be your Jonin sensei. We should get moving towards Kirigakure so that we can make it and get some training in on the way. Eiji turned around and started walking towards the gate guards. Naruto, can you come here for a second? Hitomi asked as she kneeled down onto the ground. He walked over to her and looked at her in the eyes. I need you to promise me something. What? I need you to promise me that whatever happens in those exams, you'll protect Hinata and that you will keep her safe. She said seriously. She looked at him dead in his face and stared at him until he answered. Naruto felt something inside of him sift. He felt like the entire world had just pressed pause and that he was standing in the moment forever. He didn't know what to do since all the promises he's ever made he was able to keep. This, however, was a promise that he couldn't guarantee would happen. He didn't know what would happen out there when they left the safety of the village. However, something inside of him was telling him to say yes. It wasn't Nito or Akari, but another much quieter voice. It was telling him that he needed to accept the promise, and that he would be able to do it. He felt the fire inside of him grow hotter and hotter as he thought about protecting Hinata, his best friend, his partner in crime. He knew that he could do it. Hi, I promise you that Hinata will return home totally unharmed and that I will keep her safe. I give you my word that this will happen. He looked at Hitomi and Mikoto, who at this point was looking at the pair. He smiled at them both and hugged Hitomi, who had to wipe a tear from her eye. Thank you, Naruto, I know you can do it. But please take care of yourself also. I don't think Hinata would like it if you didn't take care of yourself, Hitomi joked, which made everyone chuckle. Naruto smiled and started to turn towards the gate but was stopped by someone grabbing him. Mikoto was watching Naruto walk away towards the gate when she was assaulted by a vivid flashback to a day she would rather not remember. Flashback. Mikoto, a heavily pregnant Hitomi, and Tsunade were sprinting towards the top of the Hokage monument when they saw the Baijidama heading towards them. With the little chakra that Hitomi had left, she started to do the kaiten. Hitomi-chan, you shouldn't be doing that. You could injure the baby. Tsunade shouted as she started going through hand seals for a rock wall. Oh, and why don't tell your daughter that she shouldn't be holding down a fucking tailed beast after giving birth? The pregnant Hyuga shouted as she activated her Byakugan. Mikoto activated her Sharingan and started going through her own set of hand seals. She was about to slam her hands down on the ground when a yellow flash appeared before her eyes. She looked up and saw a man standing at 6 feet 2 inches with long shaggy blonde hair standing in front of her. He was wearing a white cloak that had kanji for 4th Hokage written on it. In front of her stood her savior, Minato Namikaze, the 4th Hokage, Thunder God Dimension Transporter Justice. As the giant purple ball of death flew towards them, it was suddenly caught into a web of seals. As the bomb sank further into the seals, Mikoto could see the sheer amount of strain it was putting on the man in front of her. Once the bomb was totally gone, Minato turned around and threw his kunai as far as he possibly could. When he saw the kunai was a safe distance away, he held up the ram hand seal and let out a sigh of relief. Release! Out of nowhere, an explosion rocked the earth they were standing on. The wind blew hot chakra-dense air and small purple particles could be seen in the air. Minato-kun! Mikoto shouted while sprinting towards the man in front of her. She started visually checking to see if he was alive. Once Minato got his breathing under control, he looked behind him to see Tsunade checking to make sure that Hitomi and the baby were okay. Is everyone alive? He shouted. Hen saw everyone nod their hands and he smiled. Good, it would really suck if my son grew up without people who loved him. Minato Namikaze Uchiha, what in fresh fuck are you doing? You could have died. Mikoto screamed at the man who nervously rubbed the back of his head. Hee, sorry about that, I saw you all in danger and I stopped it. He said nervously as he looked at Mikoto. Minato, do you have any idea what's going on? Shikaka asked as he looked at the 9 tails destroying the village. Oh, besides a giant fox in my village, my wife trying to hold down said fox. A madman who snuck into the village claiming to be Madara fucking Uchiha, who by the way is my dead dad. This man then murdered an entire squad of A and B along with Saratobi's wife just to get to Kushina and Naruto. No, I have absolutely no fucking clue what's going on, he shouted as he reached into his cloak and brought out Naruto was alright. Is that the baby? Tsunade screamed as she ran towards Naruto, who immediately woke up from his nap. She rushed over towards him and started doing a diagnostic justice on him. He should be fine, Minato shouted as he looked around trying to find something in the walls. He ran his hands around the rock face and stepped back to reveal a scroll with the kanji for seal on it. He grabbed the scroll and put it in his pocket. He then walked over to the group and sighed. Alright guys, I have some stuff for you. Mikoto, this is for you. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a letter addressed to her. Hitomi, this is for you. He handed her a similar letter. Shikaka, this is for. He handed him a kunai with seals on it. Tsunade, we didn't have time to get you anything, I'm sorry, he said as he watched his mother-in-law play with his son. Minato-kun, what is this? Mikoto shouted as she looked at him with tears in her eyes which were spinning rapidly. That is in case something happens to me and something bad happens. Which right now is 80% likely going to happen, he said as she started taking out notes and memorizing them with his own Sharingan. You're going to use it, aren't you? Shikaka asked as he frowned at his longtime friend. It's the only option we have, Minato said without looking up from his notes. I have to do this because right now we don't have anyone else that could do it besides Kushina, who is currently fighting Akari as we speak. Tobirama was right when he said a good Uchiha is a dead one. He spoke as he stood up and walked towards Tsunade to grab Naruto. Yo Minato Namikaze, there is no way my grandson is going to be a Jinchuriki. The blonde medic yelled as she protectively held Naruto. I don't have time for this, he shouted as he looked her dead in the eyes and cast the genjutsu on her. Tsunade suddenly slumped to the ground but was grabbed by Minato, who took Naruto from her arms. You're going to seal her into him, aren't you? Hitomi quietly asked as she watched her friend shush his baby in his arms. Yes, that's the current plan, though right now I don't know how successful it's going to be. Minato looked at Naruto and back at Hitomi, who nodded her head. Do what you need to do, Hokage-sama, and thank you for everything that you've done for us all. Thank you, Minato. She went up to hug him and kissed Naruto on the forehead. Well, Minato, it's been nice knowing you, the lazy Nara joked as he walked over to give the man a handshake. Thank you for saving me from those bullies all those years ago. I don't know where I'd be without you. He shook his hand but then said fuck it and hugged him. Hitomi, Shikaka, watch over Mikoto for me, okay? He asked quietly as he looked at his friend who was looking off at the rampaging fox. Both nodded their heads and went to watch over Tsunade, who was still asleep. Minato walked over to Mikoto and stood next to her. He looked out and saw the fox rampaging in the village. She's usually so nice and peaceful, Mikoto said without looking up at Minato. Yeah, I wish it didn't have to be this way, but we have to do this, he said as he whipped a tear from his eye. He then passed Mikoto baby Naruto, who was swaddled in a bright orange blanket. I'm sorry, Koto-chan. She looked over at her first true friend and smiled weakly at him. She held the baby close to her chest and kissed his forehead. You don't have to do this, she cried as she looked at Naruto, who looked back at her. We could just run away. Why can't you ever run away? She screamed at her friend who hugged her. Miko, you know I can't do that. The village would be destroyed. Kushina is already at death's door. I'm on my way with her. Akari can't be stopped by normal means. Trust me, I've looked through all my contingency plan books to try and find something. There's nothing that either of us can do. The only way to stop her is to seal her into Naruto, he said as he tried to keep his voice calm and even but could. As he finished talking, his voice was cracking and breaking. But you were going to raise him. You were so happy when you found out Kushina was pregnant. Minato, please think of yourself. Think of Naruto. Do you want him to grow up without parents? Do you want him to be at the mercy of this village? Saratobi isn't going to do jack shit, and you know it. She screamed at the man who she loved dearly. Hot tears were running down her face as she looked into his eyes. What about me? She whispered quietly. At that moment her eyes weren't the normal three-tone Sharingan. Instead, they would be replaced by a sea of red with long black pikes reaching a central midpoint in her eye. Blood suddenly started running down her from her eyes as she looked up at him. What about me, Minato? She yelled at him as she looked into his own eyes. Did you ever think about me? Did you ever think about what would happen to me if you died? Minato, I love you. I love you with my whole heart. Please don't do this. Someone else could seal it. Jiraiya could do it. Sarutobi could do it. Please, for the love of Kami, don't leave me. Minato looked at Mikoto and cried. He cried and went to hug her. Both cried in the other's arms for a few moments. Minato heard the cry of Sarutobi and knew that it was time to go. Mikoto Uchiha, you have and will always have a special place in my heart. You were my first friend, my comrade, my first love. I have always loved you. When you were sold to Fugaku it broke me, but Kushina helped me in those years. We fell in love, got married, and had a beautiful baby boy. Mikoto, I'll always be here. But can you do me one favor? He looked into her eyes and kissed her on the forehead. Promise me that you'll keep going. I want you to promise me that you'll protect Naruto. I want me to promise me that you'll keep going even when it gets hard. I know that there will be days where it seems impossible, but please, he grabbed her hand and squeezed it. Please promise this. He cried as he whipped tears from his eyes. Hi, I promise you that I will keep going, she said after a few seconds of silence. I promise that I will watch over Naruto, and I promise you that I will not give up, and I promise you Minato Namikaze Uchiha that I will never, ever, stop loving you. She shouted as she hugged him tightly. Thanks all I ask, he replied back as he kissed her forehead. I'll see you soon, Mikoto Uchiha. He carefully took Naruto from her arms and smiled at her. And thank you, he whispered as he turned around and vanished in a yellow flash. You're welcome, Minato-kun, she said as she collapsed used on the ground in tears. You're so welcome. Flashback and Naruto, I also want you to promise me something, she whispered as she looked at him with a smile. I want you to promise me that when you get out there that you won't quit, that you'll keep going no matter how hard it gets, never gives up. I want you to promise that even as you go into the unknown you won't stop trying and you won't give up. She whipped a tear that fell from her eyes, and she went to hug the child in her arms. Hi Mikoto-ka-chan, I promise you that I won't give up. He shouted once Mikoto let him go. That's all I ask, she smiled at the child in front of her. As she watched Naruto run after Hinata and Eiji she could have sworn that she saw the silhouette of a blonde man, wearing a red and white cloak mouthing the words thank you to her. She smiled and mouthed the words you welcome back. When she blinked, the strange silhouette was gone. Mikoto watched for a while as Naruto, Hinata, and Eiji walked further and further into the forest. She watched as they moved farther and farther away from the safety and comfort of their home village, and further into the unknown. Hokage's office on July 28, 52 AFK. Sarutobi was once again in his office doing paperwork. It's been 3 hours since Naruto and Hinata left with the Eiji. He looked up from his papers and looked at the door for a split second. Alright Mikoto, Hitomi, you can come in now and stop leaking Ki. It's scaring the ANBU that are in the room. He said with a sigh as looked at the door to his office. Both mothers walked into the room and had frowns on their faces. They walked over and funneled all of their Ki onto the old man who didn't waver in fear. We have some questions for you, old man, Mikoto calmly said to the Hokage who nodded his head. Alright, what do both of you want to know? He asked as he put away all of the important documents that were important and folded his hands. We both would like to know why we weren't Naruto and Hinata sensei for the Chunin exams. Hitomi yelled as she slammed her hands on the table. We were going to take them to Kiri. It's what Minato and Kushina would have wanted. Alright, first of it probably isn't what they would have wanted. He explained as he rubbed his eyes. Second, it was out of my hands from the start. It was chosen by the council. What do you mean it was chosen by the council? Mikoto shouted with emotion. It's as I said, they choose who is going to take the group of 2, he said as he pulled out a folder that was given to him the day of the meeting. This folder is the folder that Danzo handed us all. I can't find anything else on him anywhere, so that means that he is defiantly a root agent. Which means that he is definitely going to be spying on them to get as much information on them as possible. Mikoto deduced to the others who sadly nodded their heads. I wouldn't say that. The group looked up to see Kakashi and Yugao suddenly appear in the room. Both were wearing their ANBU attire, and had their weapons seated on their backs. Mikoto and Hitomi both glared at the two operatives. And where have you been the last 2 months? Hitomi shouted as she leaned over and pointed at the 2 teens who stood rooted in their place. We were checking out Kirigakure, Yugao explained while she kneeled in front of the Hokage. What does that have anything to do with the previous statement that was said? Hiruzen asked as he folded his hands on his desk. Well, we ran into Naruto and Hinata as they were walking through the forest, and they didn't have anyone else around. We asked where they were going and they said the Chunin exams. Kakashi explained as he turned to Mikoto who looked noticeably at ease. So they killed him? Hitomi asked the 2 ANBU who nodded their heads. Yes, we think that Naruto and Hinata took out this rude operative. Kakashi finally stated. The room collectively went into deep thought. Everyone knew that the 2 children were powerful, but to take out one of Danzo's agents at the age of 4 was unheard of. I don't believe it. Do any of you? Hiruzen finally exclaimed to the group. What did the battle site look like? Kakashi Yugao, report now, he said, which made the two operatives go rigid. However, before they could say anything, a large plume of smoke appeared in the room. All of the occupants in the room went on guard and had their weapons at the ready. Out of the plume stepped two small animals. One of the animals was a small black and orange fox with white tips on his ears and his two tails. The other was a small brown deer that had red-tipped ears and one tail. Carol, I told you that this was the right place, the fox said as he booped the small doe on the top of the head. Well, excuse me. It's been a while since I've been sent out to deliver messages, the deer replied as she lowered her head in submission. Sorry to be rude, but who are you both? Sarutobi asked as he looked at the two talking animals that entered his office. I am Carol of the Shika clan. I am a messenger deer server, our summoner Hinata Hyuga, the deer explained as she bowed her head to the aged leader. When did Hinata get a summons? Hitomi yelled as she looked at the deer suspiciously. She's had it for a couple of weeks. She and Naruto were in the woods one day and the deer there asked her to be her summons. Mikoto explained as she eyed the fox intensely. Sad, what are you doing here? Wait, you know this fox? Hiruzen asked the Uchiha mother, who nodded her head. Yes, he's Naruto's personal messenger fox. He uses him when he needs to find me or talk to me, she explained to the man who nodded his head. Alright, what are you both doing here? Hiruzen finally asked the two animals. We come here with a warning from Naruto and Hinata. Both of them suspect that something is going to happen during the exams. Both said that this man was carrying plans for an escape from Kiri and areas to stay away from. He also was keeping notes on everything that they were doing and saying. They also found a mission scroll on his person which led them to suspect that something was going on, Sad said seriously. He then looked at Mikoto, who looked visibly worried about the current conditions of both children. Both of the children are doing fine. They used summons to deal with the traitor. He was then killed and his body was searched by myself and Sad, Carol explained to the group, who nodded their heads at the deer. Are they injured? Mikoto finally asked after a few moments of pause. Naruto said this. As we have not completed the mission, we cannot give out any details. This is in ordinance with the Konoha Shinobi Code. Sad answered quickly to the group. Immediately Ki exploded from the two mothers. So, we currently have two 4-year-olds walking 650 miles away to a foreign country that could possibly be hostile. Kakashi asked the Hokage, who nodded his head slowly. That about sums it all up, he said quietly as he rubbed his head in frustration. Well, I'm going to go with them. Hitomi got up from her chair and started walking to the door. You can't. No ninja can interfere with a mission unless you've been given a strict order to by the Hokage. Since the Hokage doesn't know the situation, he can't send you out. I tried to do it with Kushina during the war, Mikoto explained as she frowned deeply. You would be right. Hiruzen looked at the two animals, who were getting impatient. Both of them were just standing there as the adults talked amongst themselves. Are we needed? Sad asked Carol, who looked just as bored as he did. No, you are not needed anymore. Thank you for telling me this. You are dismissed. Hiruzen smiled at the animals, who then disappeared into clouds of smoke. So, what have we learned today? Mikoto asked the group, who sat that bewildered at the events that transpired. Well, for one thing, Naruto and Hinata are now currently walking to the Mist Village, which is 700 miles away, alone, and are entering an exam which we still don't know is safe, Kakashi stated bluntly, much to the disappointment of everyone in the room. And we don't know what Danzo had planned for them either. Hitomi looked at the Hokage, who was rubbing his temples. What should I do about Danzo? He asked the group, who looked at him like he was insane. Imprison him or execute him? Mikoto stated as though it was the most obvious thing in the world. It's not that simple. There are many reasons that I can't get rid of him. Many of which I can't actually tell you. The easiest way to get rid of him is to have a new Hokage take over, the aged leader explained. So then retire, Hitomi nonchalantly stated. Ha ho ha 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 ho ha ho ha ho ha ho ha. Hiruzen laughed at how simple that sentence sounded. The sheer idea of him retiring made him cackle. Everyone in the room, including the ANBU guards, sweat dropped at the old man, who was at this point rolling around on the ground. I wish I could just retire like that. Just pass the hat off to someone else. It's not that simple. It's never been that simple. When I gave the hat to Minato, Orochimaru left, Fugaku had a fit, and the council was in an uproar. When I took the hat from Tobirama, we were in the middle of a war. When he took it from Hashirama, we were at the start of a war. Did you actually know that there's a line of succession in this village? He asked the group, who all shook their heads. Well, the way it's supposed to go is Hokage, then commander of the ANBU, then Jonin commander, head of the TI department, head of hospital, then team row captain. If we get beyond that, then the village has probably fallen apart, and the clan heads would take over. Hiruzen explained to the group, who looked at him intently, waiting for him to finish. It was followed the first time. When Hashirama-sama was assassinated, Tobirama-sama was the head of ANBU. It all got out of whack when I was chosen to be Hokage instead of the then ANBU commander Shusha, who later died in a mission. When Minato was chosen, we as a village were in really bad shape. We needed a morale booster, and more importantly, we needed a war deterrent. I explained why to Shikaku and Inoichi, so if you really want to know, just ask them. All I'm gonna say is that if Minato weren't here, we would have been slaughtered. That still doesn't explain why you can't just step down and let the current ANBU commander take over, or just pick a new choice, Hitomi explained as she looked at Hiruzen, who sighed. Alright, who would it be? The only S-rank ninjas we have are either out of the village or a 71-year-old man who is long out of his prime. But I do have my picks for Godame Hokage if I needed to pick one right now, though my top choice is not ready yet. He smiled slightly at the idea of his pick for taking over the job. Who would they be? Yugao asked the man. Tsunade would be a great choice, but she would need to be brought back to the village. Mikoto also would have been a great choice, but she's in a horrible political marriage. My last and final choice is honestly I'm shocked that you haven't figured out what I'm doing yet. It's Naruto, isn't it? Kakashi asked. Hiruzen's eyes sparkled and he nodded his head. Yes, I'm training and grooming Naruto to be the 5th Hokage. He or Hinata would be a perfect choice. They are powerful, smart, and most importantly have the potential to be the most powerful people in history. I even have a theory that both are descendants of the Sage of Six Paths. Hiruzen then decided to pull out a very old and very dusty book from his desk. The Sage of Six Paths? Yugao asked as she and Kakashi took seats around the desk so that they could hear the tale that Sarutobi was about to tell. I thought he was just a myth, Kakashi mumbled to himself. Strangely enough, both Hitomi and Mikoto stayed silent. They both knew that the sage was real because of their friendship with Kushina. Kushina had talked to Akari, who said that she had in fact met the man almost 600 years ago. Both knew of the man's power, and how he basically was the father of chakra usage. I'm reading for a book that was given to me by one of the last Senjus to live in the village besides Tsunade. His name was Mai Senju, and she was very old, he said as he opened the book. Hello, it is I, the Rikudo Sanin. However, that is how I'm known to most people. If you are reading this, then you should know me by a different name, for you will know me by the name of Hagoromo. I was born to a mother and a father. My father isn't important, but my mother was a kind and loving woman. Her name was Kagaya. She had long silky gray hair and had pale eyes. She taught me everything that I ever knew. My father abandoned our family, so she had to provide for us. She would work the land, raise the cattle, and teach us everything she knew about the world. She taught us that all life was sacred, that nature was worth preserving. She taught us what it meant to have love and to want to share that love with the rest of the world. One day, my mother got ill. She was growing weaker and weaker every year and we couldn't do anything to help her. Eventually, when I turned 21, she died. Her last words to me were, "Life is too short to not be kind. My last request is to be kind to yourself, but to the world as well." So, I set to do nice deeds for people. Eventually, I found a strange group of beings. These beings were known as the Tailed Spirits. There were 9 of them, and each had its own special power. However, the strongest and the oldest one's name was Akari. When I first met the spirits, we were inspired by their power. We wanted to be able to have even a shred of their power. So I asked them to share some of that power. We asked if they could give everyone in the world some of their power, and they all agreed. And that's how chakra was born. One of the spirits then asked if I wanted to be the one to teach people how to use this newfound source of energy, and I declined. I said that no one man should be able to have all of this power. They said that it was even more of a reason for me to be the one to lead this new era, so they gave me a tool that I could use. It was called the Rinnegan. The Rinnegan was a dojutsu that allowed the user to do many things. However, those things are not important to the story. When I was given these eyes, I asked if I was going to be the only one that had them. They all agreed that the next user must have at least one tail of chakra from all of the 9 spirits. Then and only then would he or she be able to access the true power of the Rinnegan and my true power. Many things happened as I grew older. I met many people and saw many sights. I met a wonderful woman, whose name was Haruka. She, like my mother, had strange pale eyes and had long straight blue hair. Though what I find interesting is specifically her eyes. She can do magical things with her eyes. She can make the veins in her eyes bulge and then her eyes change. She calls it the Byakugan, or the all-seeing eye as her family likes to call it. We met by a clearing and never looked back since. I then realized that she could also use chakra and that it was chakra that was making her eyes change. I immediately started teaching her how to use it, and she took it as a fish takes to water. Once we got married, we started going around to different places and teaching people how to harness their chakra. Some people had already figured out how to use it to control the shadows, some people use it for speed, and many other strange and wonderful combinations. We saw many things on our travels. While I was teaching the lessons, Haruka had somehow come up with ways to heal people. She is simply amazing at what she does. After a few years, we decided to have kids. We had 4 wonderful and amazing kids. We had Azura, who was a kind and happy child. He liked to work hard and play even harder. He somehow got brown hair and honeycomb eyes. We then had Indra, who had spiky black hair and dark black eyes. He was a slightly more stoic and moody child who only cared about getting stronger and faster than his older brother. While he was moody, we found that he has a very deep love for the things he did care about. We had Kazui, our first daughter. She had violet eyes and had bright red hair. She definitely had a strong will and an even stronger temper. What was most interesting were her chakra pools, as Haruka liked to call them. She had massive pools of not only chakra but life force as well. We theorized that she could possibly live for hundreds of years. Then we had our last child, Sawa. She took after her mother identically. She had pale eyes and long straight purple hair. She was a gentle child, and while she did learn the ways of chakra, she was much more focused on using it to heal. This wasn't to say that she couldn't fight. In fact, all of my children could fight relatively well. Azura and Indra were the heavy hitters of the family. They both were always training and getting better. Both boys created many techniques which they started calling jutsu. They could launch large fireballs, spawn tornadoes, or even make lightning rain for the sky. It's interesting though, because both Kazui and Sawa are very gentle and have a great appreciation for healing. Although Sawa thought that she could use chakra in her palms, she calls it the gentle fist, but the joke is that you don't use your fists. Everything was fine until I started getting ill. I think that it's the same thing that my mother got when she was the age I am now, but my family is tearing itself apart. Indra and Azura are fighting more and more, and the girls they've left. Haruka took Kazui and Sawa and decided that they were going to find their own path. Haruka and I still write all of the time, but it still hurts to think that Azura and Indra were the reasons that they left. The fights between the two for my title of the sage are getting to be out of hand, but I'm too weak to do anything. Azura has developed a type of ninjutsu that uses wood and trees. He calls it the Mokutan and is very powerful. Indra has a dojutsu like his mother and sister, but it's a mutation. He calls it the Sharingan, and can do so many amazing things with it, but he abuses the power. Indra terrorizes the townspeople and bullies them into giving them what he wants, and it truly sickens me. But I don't want to stop then. I honestly think that neither should be, but it's too late now. I know I am on my deathbed. I know that I don't have long, so I have named Ashura to be my successor. I know that he won't take it, and I know that he won't be able to get my eyes. It takes a special soul to get these eyes. A soul that is pure of heart, a soul sound in body, and a noble spirit. Only then would they get my eyes and my power. Reader, be wary of the power that we have, for it will corrupt just as much as it heals. Hagoromo. The room was totally silent once Sarutobi stopped reading the note. They all looked at him with wide and terrified eyes as they let the information sink in. Mikoto and Hitomi were stunned to silence as they considered how deeply connected they were to the sage himself. Do you realize why Naruto is destined for great things yet? Hiruzen asked the group. Everyone's eyes immediately widened to extreme proportions. He has blood from 3 of the 4 kids. And Hinata makes up the final one. They are the sage and his wife. Hitomi stated quietly. Yes, they are. And they are destined for great things. Hiruzen stated sagely as he turned around and looked out into the horizon. Great things indeed. Woods of Water Country on August 13, 52 AFK. A thick gray mist was all she could see as she walked through the thick dense forest. It covered everything, from the trees to the ground. It was all underneath a layer of mist so thick that she couldn't see through it. I hate it when he does this, she mumbled under her breath as she trudged through the misty woods of a land far away. She looked up into the cloudless sky and groaned. Why couldn't he just meet me back at the tower? The women looked tired. She stood a respectable 5 feet 4 inches and had an athletic build, though it wasn't visible under the thick black cloak that she wore. The only thing she let people see was her ample bosom, since she left the top part of her cloak unzipped. 1. She had a very angular face with amber eyes and lavender eyeshadow with short blue straight hair. She wore black stockings and 5-inch ninja heels. On and on the women walked alone in the dead of night. Her footprints were soft and silent. She didn't look alert at all. In fact, she looked quite relaxed. All of that changed when a kunai sailed past her head. Well, what do we have here, boys? She turned her head and looked at the origin of the kunai. Standing in front of her were pale men dressed in gray vests with vertical stripes on them, black pants with ninja pouches tied at their waists, and blue ninja sandals. What do Kirigakure shinobi want with one woman? She asked the men who smirked at her evilly. Well, you aren't just one woman, Konan of Amigakure. The leader of the group explained. I'm flattered that you know who I am. Now answer my question so I may consider sparing your useless, unyielding lives. She fired back in an emotionless tone which sent shivers down the men's spines. We were here to capture and kill you. But based on outside factors, one of the men smiled evilly at Konan, who stood impassively in front of the group. We have decided to allow you to live if you perform certain tasks for us. A short fat man said with a disgusting grin on his face. Idiots. She thought to herself as she looked at the sad excuse for shinobi that was standing in front of her. I'll bite. What do you want me to do for you big strong men? She asked with fake interest in her voice. Well, we'll let you go if you fuck us. A man with long blonde hair answered with his own grin. Really? That's all I have to do? She asked as she slowly started to unzip her cloak, showing off more cleavage to the group of perverts in front of her. Is this what you wanted? She shuddered out. All of the men were eagerly staring at Konan, who was slowly unzipping her cloak until she vanished into thin air. All the men looked around in surprise as they tried to find her. Where did she go? One of them shouted as they drew their weapons. Men. All you ever think about is pleasure, Konan said. Her voice filled the clearing, which made the men even more frightened. You 4 are horrible excuses for ninja and should have your ranks revoked. Lucky for you, you won't have to face your Kage ever again. Paper style, shadow shuriken jutsu. The entire clearing was filled with paper shurikens that came out of the trees. The men tried to dodge them and succeeded with a few cuts and scrapes. One of the men, whose name was Finn, tried to rally his men together. "All right, men, we can still do this," he shouted as he brought out a handful of shuriken. "She may be an S-rank ninjak." He was cut off by a chop to the neck from Konan, who had reappeared behind him. She then launched into a rapid series of hand seals ending with the bear seal. Fire style, giant fireball jutsu. 2 large fireballs flew from her mouth and collided with the still stunned men who were now trying to run away. This made the woman smirk as she vanished and reappeared in front of them. "What's wrong? I thought you were enjoying yourselves," she quipped as she stood impassively in front of the exit of the clearing. "We've got to get OU." The poor ninja was outwitted by a shuriken moving so fast that he couldn't move to dodge it. Paper style, hurricane of paper. Konan stretched out her hands and caused a hurricane of sharp pieces of paper to appear and rip the men to shreds. The pieces were moving so fast that they didn't even have time to react. They all simply perished in their own puddles of blood. Konan looked at the men in disgrace and shook her head in disappointment. She knew that they didn't have a chance and tried to end their lives in the fastest and most effective way possible. She then continued to walk deeper and deeper into the forest. That didn't look very changeling. She didn't need to turn around to know exactly who had appeared out of thin air. She had already sensed his presence while she was fighting the 4 goons. She simply continued walking into the woods. "I expect a response out of you when I speak. What do you want, Madara?" she asked in a neutral tone, which made the man even madder. "When I say something, I want you to answer. I don't know how pain does things, but when I speak to a woman I expect a timely reply," the man said in an annoyed tone. Konan finally turned around to acknowledge the man who was speaking to her. The man stood at 56 and had a white spiral mask with 9 stage tendrils on it. There was a hole that left his right eye uncovered. Short black hair could be seen under the hood that he was wearing. He had on a dark blue hooded cloak and ninja sandals. "What do you want, Madara?" Konan repeated with a look of heavy disinterest on her face. Madara flared his chakra slightly and stepped closer to Konan, who still looked unfazed. "Watch your tone with me, girl," he spat as he looked Konan directly in the eyes, revealing his red spinning Sharingan eye. "It would do you well to not test me. Madara is dead. Everyone knows this. Hell, there are written accounts of his death. How is this guy using his namesake and getting away with it? How has Nagato been deceived by him?" Konan angrily thought as she relented and bowed her head submissively. "That's better." Madara backed off of Konan and started walking next to her. "Now, as I was saying, those fools didn't look too challenging for you." "No, they were too focused on my chest to actually do their job as a ninja." She sighed as she glanced at her exposed bosom and frowned even deeper. "Yeah, I can understand why they would do that." "What are they, F-cups?" the man asked with a light amount of amusement in his voice. Konan glared at the man next to her and walked away from him. This caused a growl to escape from the man, who then proceeded to shushin in front of her and grab her throat. "What did I say about answering me?" he growled out as he squeezed harder. Konan knew that she could easily escape Madara's hold. She knew that if she really wanted to, she could easily injure or even kill the man-child in front of her. She also knew that the backlash behind killing this vile animal would be too much for her. So, Konan went along with getting choked by him. "I'm as sorry, Madara-sama," she choked out from his grasp. He smirked from under his mask and let her go, causing her to go into a coughing fit. "Now tell me, how big are they? Why? Why do I put up with this every time? This insignificant piece of garbage is literally sexually harassing me, and I can't do a damn thing less risk Nagato getting angry at me. I guess I don't have any other choice." "Well, I simply don't understand. He has the Rinnegan for Kami's sake. What does he need this fool for anything? So, what does he need him for? Money? Influence? I don't get it," she thought to herself as she continued to ignore the masked man. "I expect an answer." He once again flared his chakra and got into Konan's face. "Yes. They are an F-cup, but I've gained some weight recently, so they got bigger. Are you fucking happy now, you teenage creep?" she screamed at the boy who looked at her with his Sharingan slowly spinning. "I know for a fact that the real Madara Uchiha died in 32 FK. He was born in 29 BFK. This would mean that he was 61 when he died. If you were Madara, it would mean that you would be 80 years old, and you clearly don't look 80 years old, let alone the fact that he was 6 feet 4 inches and you are not even." The masked man blitzed Konan with a kunai knife and tried to slash her. She dodged the knife and tried to punch the man, but her fist went through his torso. "Ugh, this ability," she angrily thought as she retracted her arm and dodged another punch for the man. She then jumped back and sent a wave of shuriken towards him. Madara let them go through his body and sprinted towards Konan, who got ready for another attack from the man. Fire style, blast wave wind dance. Madara took a deep breath and let out a spiraling torrent of fire. The fire swirled around Konan and closed her. She, being as crafty as the man in front of her, let the fire engulf her. When the jutsu stopped, all that was left was a pile of burnt paper. A paper clone. "I should have known," Madara mumbled to himself as he looked around to find the woman who had seemingly disappeared into midair. "You think you're the only one that can disappear and reappear?" she calmly asked in a disembodied voice inside of the clearing. "Two can play at this game. Water style, dynamic river explosion." Immediately all the mist that was in the air started to expand and form small explosions. Madara let the explosions go through him since he knew that they wouldn't do anything to hurt him. That damn ability! He's letting them go straight through him. What if there's a way to make the explosions last for longer periods of time? Maybe if there were continuous explosions at which she was interrupted from her thoughts when she felt cold steel pressed against her neck. Her eyes widened due to the fact that he was able to find her so quickly even though she was perched on a very tall tree branch. You never stood a chance, Madara mumbled as he pressed the kunai closer to Konan's neck. That's where you're wrong. Madara looked behind him, and his eye widened slightly. The real Konan stood behind him with an explosion tag tied to a kunai. She quickly dropped the tag and kicked Madara in the stomach. The kick went through him, but it also allowed Konan to get off of the tree branch before it exploded, causing Madara to fall to the ground. Don't underestimate a woman, she mumbled as she dusted herself off and continued walking. So that's why she's in S rank. If she had been really trying, she very well could have severely injured or even killed me. Her usage of clones was brilliant, he thought to himself as he got up to follow Konan. After a few hours of walking, the masked man and Konan stopped in front of a cave. Konan entered and lit a torch that was on the wall with a fire just as while Madara followed her inside. After a few minutes of walking, the pair stopped in front of a wooden door covered in seals. Why do we have to go through this every damn time? The man mumbled as he bit his left thumb. He then swiped it over the door and waited until he heard the door click open. Konan did the same thing and entered the room. The room itself was a very small circular room with 4 chairs in it. They were spread equally across a table in the center of the room. Well, look who decided to show up. Danzo, they are perfectly on time. Konan looked up and saw the old war hawk sitting at one side of the table. She never liked the man due to the fact that he was partially responsible for the death of her best friend Yahiko. Anoki, you're getting soft in your old age. We only have room for one senile old Kage in the elemental nation, Danzo said with a smirk on his face. Anoki was a short old man with a large button nose. He had a long gray beard and an ever-present borderline arrogant smirk on his face. He was the Tsuchikage and had been for almost as long as Sarutobi had been Hokage. Yes, we both have arrived, and I would like to. Madara was rudely cut off by Anoki, who eyed up Konan with a predatory look on his face. Who's the girl? Anoki asked as he leered at the women who glared at him. Oh, her? She's the representative for the Akatsuki. Madara explained to the old Kage, who frowned. There's no reason that a woman should be here, he said as she slammed his fist on the table in a childish manner. What is Pain doing keeping this women around? And she's not even pregnant. Konan was struggling to keep her composure together as she heard everything that the old man was saying to her. She had been around people who didn't agree with the fact that Pain's right hand was a woman. She had been around people who didn't like her. But right now, she was going to strangle this old man. Who does he think he is? Just because I'm a woman doesn't mean I'm not a capable ninja and can't do anything but breed children and repopulate from the wars. I mean no disrespect, but women can do much more than breed children and keep up with the household. As I'm sure you've heard of Konoha's Crimson Slasher, who decimated a good chunk of your forces in the last war. She internally smirked when she saw Anoki's face turn red with anger. You shut your mouth, you bitch. Anoki's rage was clearly visible in the ki that he was leaking throughout the room. Or perhaps you've heard of Konoha's Mistress of the Night? Or Konoha's All-Seeing Seeker? All 3 of them were very powerful women who did a number of incredible things in the Third Great War. They are an inspiration for young girls everywhere who want to be a ninja. They were also a huge inspiration to me, and I'm honored to have met them. 2. Yes, we are quite aware of the impact that Kushina Uzumaki, Mikoto Uchiha, and Hitomi Hyuga had on the Third Great Ninja War. You are not them, you no-name cunt. Enough. Everyone in the room went silent and looked to see Madara radiating ki and chakra. We are here to talk about what is happening tomorrow. Now shut up and listen, because this. He gets up and unrolls a storage scroll that unloaded a large collection of documents, timelines, and maps onto the table. This is where the fun begins, he says with a sinister grin on his face. Deep in the forest of Water Country. Naruto-kun, are you sure we're going the right way? Hinata asked the blonde boy who was holding her hand and leading her through the forest. Hinata-chan, Ka-chan, and Ba-chan said that this was the right way, so I'm gonna trust them. Naruto whined as he kicked a rock down the path they were taking. But Naruto, we need to get to Kirigakure in 3 days and we've been walking for a week. We barely have any wiggle room to get there on time, and I really don't want to sleep on water again. She yelled to the boy who nervously scratched the back of his head. Hinata-chan, I said I was sorry for accidentally burning the map. I didn't mean to burn both piles of documents that were on that trader. Hinata sighed to herself and patted Naruto on the head. She then pulled him into a hug and smiled at him. It's okay, Naruto-kun, I'm just worried, that's all. Both parties pulled apart when they felt the explosion of ki and chakra in the air. Naruto immediately pulled Hinata behind him and activated his 2-tome Sharingan. He started looking around and tried to find where the source was coming from. After a second of frantic searching and the use of his senses, he pinpointed 4 chakra signatures deep underground. He recognized one of them as being Danzo but didn't recognize the other 3. Hinata, activate your eyes and look there, he pointed to the underground room he was looking at. The girl nodded her head and activated her eyes with a pulse of chakra. There are 3 men and 1 woman. All of them have extremely large chakra sources. I don't know what they are saying, but Naruto, we need to leave. Hinata shut off her eyes and started pulling Naruto further down the path. Hinata, what's wrong? He shouted as he ran behind her. The woman looked at me and mouthed run, she explained to Naruto, whose eyes immediately widened. That's not possible. She wouldn't know who were. Unless she could sense the kind of chakra that we had. Naruto shouted. Guppy, nothing is impossible in this world. Chakra and genetics can do some crazy things. Mito explained from inside Naruto's head. While you come from a long line of extremely gifted sensors, there are those who are better than even us. This woman very well could have not only sensed who you are, but what clan you both were from. She also could have known both of your parents, and could sense the similarities in your chakra signatures. You simply don't know. Naruto relayed the information that was said to Hinata, who nodded her head in understanding. We should still get out of here. They now might know we are here. I totally agree. Naruto nodded his head and both children started running towards where they thought Kirigakure was. It took them 2.5 days to get to Kirigakure. Naruto had been carrying Hinata in a piggy pack when he saw a wooden post that pointed towards Kirigakure. He immediately woke Hinata up and pointed to the sign. We made it, Hina-chan. He shouted, much to the ire of the sleepy girl. That's wonderful, Naruto-kun. Soon we can find actual beds to sleep in, she said in between yawns. Yeah, let's go. He shouted as he redoubled his efforts to get to Kirigakure. It took the boy 2 hours of sprinting to arrive at the village gates. When he arrived, he lowered Hinata and walked up to a man wearing a gray striped vest and blue pants. State your business, he said to the children who looked at him seriously. We are here to take the Chunin exams, Naruto explained to the man who looked at the 2 toddlers with a raised eyebrow. Really? He asked suspiciously. You both look like 3-year-olds. What village are you both even from? We are from Konohagakure no Sato. Hinata explained as she produced the paper necessary for entry. The guard looked over the papers and glanced at the 2 children. He signed and stamped them with the official gate guard stamp and let them pass. You may pass. Good luck in the exams. Thank you, sir. Naruto and Hinata both shouted as they ran into the village hidden in the mist. While the children were walking through the streets, a lady was watching them from the entrance of a store. She was a young woman in her with long auburn hair and green eyes. She was wearing a long blue dress that barely covered the underside of her large chest and stopped at her mid-thighs and had a large slit that showed off her thigh. There's no way, she whispered to herself as she watched Naruto and Hinata walk into a hotel, walk behind the store she was at and jump to the roof where she could get a better view of Naruto. That old man told me he died in childbirth. I knew he was still alive, she said through gritted teeth. Wait, why would he be here? That old man has gone senile. He's sending children to the exams? She shouted into the cool afternoon air. Well, cousin, she said quietly as she jumped back down to the streets below. She then walked back to her apartment, but not before looking back and smiling. This is where the fun begins. Hotel room on Kirigakure on August 14, 52 AFK. Naruto-kun, we should really go over all the information that we have on Kirigakure. You never know when it would be helpful to know everything about a specific area, Hinata commented as they lay in their hotel room. It was the night before the exams and Hinata was starting to get anxious. This was her first time being so far away from home and she just wanted to be as prepared as possible. Alright, Naruto pulled out one of his storage seals and placed it on the bed. This was a blue scroll that was covered in intricate seals. He raised his right hand while holding the ram hand seal. With a quick pulse of chakra, the scroll unsealed a large spiral notebook that was filled with pages upon pages of information. Naruto smiled to himself as he held up the thick notebook. This is all the information that I have on the elemental nations. It's taken me 8 months of studying with Jiji-sama to get this far. He smiled brightly and plopped the book onto one of the 2 beds that were in the room. Where do you want to start, Hinata-chan? Let's start with Kirigakure since that's where we are right now, she replied while staring at the notebook. Okay, he flipped through the notebook until he reached the page where all the information he had on Kirigakure was stored. Alright, most of it is the history of Kiri. It talks about the culture and stuff like that. These shinobi are very good with water attacks and have strong water affinities. Main enemies are Kyuubi and Suna due to trade disputes. He explained as he finished summarizing the notes he had written. What about their Kage? Hinata asked as she tried to get a better grip on the situation. Well, Naruto grabbed another storage scroll from his pouch and released it. Out of the smoke laid a large black leather book covered in scratches and scuffs. It looked to have been used quite a lot. On the cover read International Bingo Book, Legacy Edition. Naruto then flipped through the book and landed on a page with a short man with a vertical scar on his right cheek. He has messy gray hair and purple eyes. He wore the traditional blue and white robes of the Mizukage. Ninja Bingo Book Profile. Name Yugura Karatachi. Age 30. Date of birth April 3, 22 years after the founding of Konoha. Rank Yandame Mizukage A rank. Skill level Kage. Abilities is the Jinchuriki of the 3 tails. Can use all 3 tails of power. Is known to be able to use high-level water and wind justice. Fights with a large metal club or staff. Notes: most of the time like to resolve conflicts peacefully but will fight back if provoked. If you do get into a conflict, do not underestimate him. He will sneak up on you and try to end the fight very quickly. Naruto repeated all the information that he had from his book to Hinata, who nodded her head. Well, that's their Kage. Jiji-sama said that he's quite good at politics, though he has noticed that the man always wants to get things done as fast as possible, which can lead to him getting sloppy. He also said that man likes to keep things peaceful and wants to avoid needless death. Naruto commented. Who do you want to know about next? I want to know more about IWA. Hinata looked at Naruto and noticed him sigh. What's wrong? Do you not have any information on IWA? Jiji-sama doesn't like it when I bring them up. I also don't have a large amount of information about Inoki their Kage. Naruto flipped through his bingo book and landed on the page with the old Kage on it. Fun fact, he and Jiji-sama are the only people to not have an official page in the bingo book. We just have some notes on them. Naruto looked at the page and frowned. The notes we do have say he's the same age as Jiji. He has a short temper and hates women being shinobi due to his wife dying in the Second Shinobi War. He only lets the women in his village fight when there is an absolute necessity for them to fight. It's honestly really sad, he said with a frown on his face. That's terrible. Hinata gasped to herself as she looked at the notes that Naruto was reading. Yeah, Naruto frowned to himself as he closed his notes and sighed. But we can't think about that right now, he said with a small smile on his face. What do you mean? Hinata glanced at Naruto, who was sealing everything back into the scrolls. Well, we have an exam to win. He grinned at the girl in front of him who was sighing. But what about the things that weird guy had on him? Naruto looked at Hinata with a raised eyebrow. What about them? He asked while shrugging his shoulders. They weren't very helpful. They also didn't tell us much information about what was going to happen. He then waved it all of with his signature grin. And besides, all they talked about was some bloody mist, whatever that means anyway. I'm sure we'll be fine. But Naruto, what could that mean? Hinata asked her partner, who shrugged his shoulders. I have no idea, he sighed as he flopped down onto the bed in their room. The duo still had a few hours of downtime before the actual exam started, and Naruto wanted to send it thinking and relaxing. We should make a store. Hinata looked at Naruto once again with a raised eyebrow. She remembered that he had asked about making a store before but still didn't know why. Naruto-kun, you still haven't told me why you want to make a store, she said with a sigh. Well, there are a few reasons. He sat up and looked out the window. One is obvious. I want to get super rich. But there is another reason. He then proceeded to whip out his own personal notebook and flip to a page with a large diagram of the world map on it. If we make a store in Konoha, then grow it to everywhere in Fire Country, we could have an entire network of stores. What if we did that in the entire world? Not only would we be rich, but imagine the sheer amount of information we could collect. What if they were also restaurants in it or a lounge? Imagine the amount of information that we could get on the entire world. He shouted as he showed Hinata the plans that Naruto had. Hinata looked them over and thought about it. She knew that they wouldn't be able to do this without a lot of help from an adult, but the idea itself was sold and could be very useful. She looked at her friend who had a megawatt grin on his face and giggled. It's a cool idea, Naruto-kun, but we are only 4 years old. We would need an adult to help us get this thing off to the ground. She smiled and patted the boy on the head. I know. We can ask Mikoto Kachan to help us. Or even your. Naruto immediately went silent when he felt the presence of someone walking to their door. Naruto looked at and nodded at her. She immediately activated her Byakugan and confirmed that someone was walking towards their door. A few seconds later the sound of light tapping could be heard throughout the entire. Genin, Uzumaki and Hyuga, report to the front of the hotel for the start of the Chunin exams. A female voice commanded from the other side of the door. Well, Naruto-kun, Hinata whispered to the blonde who had a face-splitting grin on his face. Looks like it's time to become legends, he said as he pulled his black over his face. A few minutes later the two children walked out of the hotel and immediately noticed the large crowd of genin that were staying in that specific hotel. Naruto and Hinata surveyed their surroundings and took note of the fact that they were the youngest people there. Naruto grabbed Hinata's hand and ran to the front of the crowd so that they could see and hear everything better. And Naruto-kun, stop pulling me please, Hinata pleaded to her friend, but it fell on deaf ears. After a few more moments, Naruto had brought them to the front of the crowd where they saw a short man in blue and white robes standing on a platform. Welcome to the Kirigakure Chunin exams, the man said, which caused a large number of cheers to erupt for the crowd. After soaking in the cheers and shouts for a few seconds, the man put his hand up, which immediately caused the crowd to go silent. My name is Yagura, and I am the Yandere Mizukage. I would like to take this time to personally welcome you all to Kirigakure. Yagura smiled at the genin who were all waiting with bated breath about the first part of the exam. The first section of the exam will be as follows. Each team will receive a number that corresponds to a specific scroll that is being stored in the house or apartment of a Kiri, Chunin or Jonin. Your job is to retrieve the scroll and head to the rendezvous point located at the shore of the departed, which is located at the far east end of the village. Teams have 48 hours to produce a scroll or else they face termination from the exams. The Kage spoke with a dark undertone which made all the genin present shiver. Are we allowed to fight the ninja if they are in their house when we go to collect the scroll? A teenager with long purple hair asked. Yagura looked at the girl who asked the question and smirked evilly. You are allowed to terminate anyone who gets in the way of your mission. I don't care who you kill, As long as you bring the scroll that you were supposed to bring, that's all that matters. Naruto looked at the Kage in front of him, and frowned. Something's not adding up. Gigi said that he's usually a very peaceful person. Why would he encourage the killing of his own ninja? He thought to himself, as he looked at the man who was standing on the stage. I don't know Naruto-kun, but something doesn't feel right, Akari commented from the young boy's head. What do you mean, Ka-chan? He asked his mother, who hummed to herself as she tried to figure out a way to explain it. Naruto-kun, that man is the same as you. He houses a tailed spirit in his tummy just like you. His spirit is the three tails, also known as Sanbai. Usually, if we are close enough to each other we can communicate. But I can barely even feel his chakra, which usually gets leaked out through the seal. Something has happened and I don't know what it is. Yugura also seems to be off as well. Be careful, Naruto, because I know something is wrong here, Akari said to the boy, who nodded his head in understanding. I'll be careful, Ka-chan, don't worry. He thought as he felt Hinata shake him lightly. Naruto-kun, we need to get our scroll, Hinata whispered to the boy, who scrunched up his face. Wait, what did I miss? He asked as he tried to figure out what was going on, since he saw that people were moving around. The Mizukage just told us to grab a number from the front. We have number 37, is there something wrong? Hinata asked as she pulled out the slip of paper she was given from a jonin. Naruto, Hinata along with all the other genin looked up at the short Kage, who banged his staff of the ground to get everyone's attention. Now that you all have your numbers, the first part of the exam starts now. He gave a sinister grin and then disappeared in a wall of water. Wait, Naruto said as he tried to think back on everything that was explained during the ceremony. He never mentioned where the scrolls were or which houses they were in. Naruto trailed off as his eyes widened. We need to get out of the open and hide now. He grabbed Hinata's arm and shoo-shined back to their hotel room. Naruto, what's going on? Hinata yelled at the blonde, who closed his eyes and got into a meditative pose. He's having us not only kill his shinobi but the other genin too. He didn't tell us which houses the scrolls would be in, nor did he tell us where in the village the scrolls would be. He also gave the green light for us to kill anyone and everyone who gets into our way, Naruto explained to Hinata, whose pupilless eyes immediately widened. What? She gasped as she started to piece together in the information that Naruto had just presented her. But that doesn't make any sense. Right? She asked quietly as she tried to stop shaking. All I know is that this is going to get very bloody very fast, Naruto mumbled as he kept trying to pinpoint all the genin who was currently trying to hide. He knew that if they had any chance in making it out of these exams alive, they would need to be on their A-games. We need to get as many numbers as possible, Hinata said quietly as she looked out the window at the eerily calm and desolate village. My thoughts exactly. If we are gonna have any shot at getting a scroll that matches a number, we are gonna have to get other numbers from other genin teams. Which means, we're gonna have to kill other teams, Hinata mumbled to herself as she continued to stare out the window of their hotel room. She knew that she would have to kill people, she just didn't think she would have to do it so much so fast. I know you don't like this. She looked at the reflection of the glass and saw Naruto standing up and walking towards her. He had always been her light whenever she get down about her job. I know you don't like to kill, but right now it's kill or be killed, and Naruto immediately pulled out a kunai and jumped in front of a very confused Hinata. Suddenly the window of their hotel room broke, allowing multiple figures to be able to enter the room. One was a pale boy with straight brown hair and green eyes. He wore black pants and had on a dark green shirt. The next figure was a dark-skinned girl with curly black hair with a streak of red in it. She wore a dark green V-neck shirt and high-waisted black ninja pants with black sandals. The final figure was a dark-skinned boy with jet black hair and blue eyes. He wore the same outfit as the first boy did. All three teenagers had Cloud Village headbands tied around. Well, look what we have here, the girl said as she circled the duo. A couple of kids who don't know what they are doing. She smirked to herself as she twirled a kunai in her hand. What do you want? Naruto asked the group, who laughed at him. Give us your number and we'll let you live. The dark-skinned boy commanded as he too pulled out a kunai. And if we don't? Naruto asked with a smirk on his masked face. You'll be sliced to ribbons, the girl said calmly as she continued to twirl her kunai on her pointer finger. It's your choice. Naruto glanced at Hinata, who nodded her head slightly. Naruto let go of her and walked out to meet the three genin, who smiled at each other smugly. Oh, alright, here you go. He closed his eyes and activated his Sharingan. When he reopened his eyes, all three genin looked into them, which caused them to immediately fall to the ground asleep. Naruto sprinted over to the girl and started pockets for her team's number. Hinata, can you find the number? We need to move quickly, he shouted as he looked through the girl's stuff. Hi. Hinata activated her Byakugan and found the slip of paper in the pale boy's breast pocket. After securing the number 3, both children deactivated their eyes and jumped out of the window of the hotel. We need to get a better hiding spot if we are gonna survive this, Naruto whispered to Hinata, who nodded her head in agreement. So far we have 2 numbers and it's almost 4 in the afternoon. We need to move quickly. I sense a team about 60 feet to the left of us. There's also a team 45 feet northwest of us. Who do you want to go after? Naruto whispered to the girl, who shrugged her shoulders. Whichever one is the closest, she answered back, which garnered a nod from Naruto. Alright, let's go. Naruto took off running towards the team of 3 rock genin. Naruto smirked as he rushed them with a kunai in hand and slashed one of the ninjas' throats. He looked at the second and third members of the team, and saw that they had arrows sticking out of their foreheads. He looked over at the building and saw Hinata with her bow unsealed. Naruto gave her a thumb-up shushine to her location on the roof. "What do you see?" he asked as he activated his Sharingan to try and get himself a better view. "I think I know where one of the scrolls could be." She pointed to a house that had a red roof and was made out of bricks. It had multiple windows and had a black door. "Alright, do you want me to go check it out, or do you want to come with me?" he asked as he prepared to shoosh down to the roof of the house. "I'm coming with you." "Did you think I wasn't?" the blue-haired child yelled at her blonde counterpart. "I was just asking," he mumbled before he disappeared in a swirl of leaves. Naruto and Hinata made their way down to the roof of the house and found out that there was someone already in the building. Both children looked at each other and sighed. 3, 2, 1 Naruto put up the ram hand seal with his right hand and channeled a small amount of chakra into his signature, Justice. Bring down the thunder. A small bolt of lightning hit the roof of the house and caused a large part of it to cave in and collapse. Naruto and Hinata jumped into the hole and sprinted through the 3rd floor of the building. "Where's the scroll?" Naruto signed to Hinata, who pointed below them. Naruto groaned and silently crept down the hallway and found a set of stairs that led to the floor below them. As they crept along, Naruto noticed that the chakra signature had entirely disappeared. He held up his hand and looked around. "Alright, let's see who these two are." Wind style. Great breakthrough. Suddenly, a large force of wind hit Naruto and Hinata square in their backs, which caused them to fall on their faces. Naruto caught himself and looked around to figure out what was going on. Wind style. Drilling air bullet. Naruto's eyes widened when he saw the bullets of air coming towards him. He then went through his own hand seals and slammed his hands on the ground. Earth style. Rock wall. A wall of rock erupted from the floor of the house, which stopped the bullets of air that were coming towards them. "Hinata, where are they?" he asked as he tried to sense the person's chakra. Hinata activated her Byakugan and looked around. After a few seconds, she spotted their attacker and noticed that she was covered in chakra. "Naruto-kun, she's 20 feet in front of you and is covered in chakra. It looks like it's a genjutsu," she shouted as she tried to cancel out the justice. Naruto smirked to himself as he starts going through more hand seals. After 10 seals, he sent out a large pulse of chakra that swept through the entire house. "There, now we should be able to see them," he said as he looked around to try and find their attacker. "Wow, I'm impressed," a female voice said through one of the doors of the house. "Not many people could figure out a way to cancel out my jutsu. Especially not a child. You both should be proud of yourselves." She smirked as she started going through hand seals. "Alright, Kushina-chan, let's see how good your son is." Water style. Water bullet. The mystery woman spat out multiple bullets of water from her mouth and sent them straight towards Naruto and Hinata. Hinata glanced at Naruto, who was already running through his own hand seals. Fire style. Giant fireball jutsu. Naruto spat out one large fireball which sailed through the air. After a few seconds, the two elemental balls collided in a large show of steam. Naruto looked behind him and saw that Hinata had already left to try and find that scroll that they were looking for. "Well, Naruto-kun, you've grown since the last time I've seen you." Naruto looked around to try and figure out who the person was that was talking to him but couldn't find anyone. "Who are you?" he shouted as he tried to stretch out his senses. "Naruto seal. It's good to see that. It's good to see that Hashiki really did have that daughter he wanted." Akari raised an eyebrow at the elderly Uzumaki who was sitting next to her on the couch. "Do you know this person?" she asked to the Mito nodded her head. "Yes, though I don't know of her. I know who their parents are," she replied with an aged smile on her face. "Who is she?" Akari knew she had seen the person before, but honestly, she had met so many people in her life she wasn't surprised that she had forgotten someone. "That's one of Kushina's cousins. Her dad was Dan Uzumaki's second older brother. I'm sure you know of the 4 Uzumaki brothers. The oldest one had a boy who I think moved to Amigakure when Yuzu got invaded. The second oldest had Mei, whose family moved to Kirigakure. The third oldest had a daughter named Shizun who was sent with Tsunade right after Kushina was born and crowned the crown princess of Yuzugakure," Mito explained as she watched the fight unfold between Naruto and Mei. Akari thought for a minute to try and remember the woman who was currently fighting her host. After thinking about it for a few minutes, she remembered seeing the auburn-haired women with Kushina when they were older. "Oh, I remember her now. They met up after the Third War while she was pregnant," Akari said while reminiscing on the memories. "She probably isn't going to tell him how they are related," Mito pointed out nonchalantly. "Yeah, to be honest with you, I don't really want to have that conversation right now anyway," the ancient fox spirit said with a hint of sadness in her voice. "Yeah," Mito sighed and rubbed the bridge of her nose. She knew that conversation was not going to be a pleasant one. Mito herself was not ready for that conversation with Naruto, and she hoped that it wouldn't happen for a long time. Outside Naruto's seal. "Now why would I answer that?" Mei said with a smirk on her face. She walked up to the masked boy. "Besides, what's the point of knowing if you won't be alive to make the information useful?" She smirked at him, and then held up a single hand seal. Water style. Roaring wave. Using the stem that was already in the air, Mei formed a medium-sized wave of water and sent it crashing down towards the boy. Naruto saw this and started sprinting towards the wall while forming hand seals. Lightning style, sonic pulse. Naruto had a sly smile underneath his mask as he sent lightning towards the wave of water. When the electricity hit the water, it went towards Mei, whose eyes immediately widened. Well shit, Mei thought just before turning into water. Naruto's eyes widened when he felt fingers touching his neck behind him. But how I got you with lighting? He shouted as his brain went through ways to get him out of this situation. You thought that a mere genin could defeat Kiri's Crimson Wave? Mei said with a raised eyebrow. Naruto's eyes widened when he heard the name. You're Mei Terumi? It's an honor to meet you. I read all. Naruto was then knocked unconscious by a neck chop delivered to him by Mei, who shook her head. He did a great job, he just needs to learn how to keep his mouth shut during a fight. She mumbled to herself as she picked up the boy and carried him towards a bed she had made. Now my clone should have dealt with the Hyuga by now, so I guess it's time to let them rest. She opened a door that was in the now ruined hallway and saw her clone sitting next to an unconscious Hinata. You can dispel now, she said to the clone, who nodded its head and disappeared in a spell of water. Once Mei got the memories of her fight with Hinata sorted out, she looked at the two genin and smirked. Those are not your average genin. I was using mid-chunin speeds and strategies against them. Sarutobi, what are you up to? She thought to herself as she looked at the two children who were resting. Hinata was the first one to wake up from her deep unconscious. She looked around and saw that Naruto was right next to her, still asleep. She also noticed that she still had the scroll in her hand. Where did that lady go? She asked herself while checking herself over for any injuries. Once she knew that there were no injuries on herself or Naruto, she used medical chakra to wake up her blonde partner, who immediately groaned upon being brought back to full concussus. Where did she go? Naruto yelled as he sat up in the bed and grabbed a handful of shuriken. Naruto-kun, she's long gone from here, Hinata explained as she grabbed the scroll and looked at the clock. Her eyes immediately widened when she saw that they only had a few hours to get to the location they needed to be at so that they could pass. Naruto, we need to go now. She jumped out of the bed and immediately started making her way out of the house with Naruto quick on her heels. After a solid 30 minutes of hard running through a seemingly destroyed village, the two children made it to the shore of the departed, where they saw at least 15 teams of 3 remaining. We made it, Hinata wheezed out as she tried to catch her breath. Yeah, Naruto said as he too tried to catch his breath. We did. A few minutes went by before a large plume of smoke erupted from the water. Once the smoke disappeared, Yagura stepped out holding his staff and wearing a green shirt with blue pants. He looked at the remaining teams and smirked to himself. So, it all went as planned, he thought to himself, making his smirk widen. Congratulations, he said to Genin, who all cheered loudly. Yagura let the young ninja celebrate for a few minutes before silencing the crowd. Once again, I would like to congratulate you on finishing the first part of the Kirigakure Chunin exams, he said with a smile on his face which looked a little too sincere. What's the next part of the exams? One of the more unruly genin shouted to the Kage, which made the man's smile even more unveiling. Naruto looked at the man and immediately grabbed Hinata's hand. She looked at him with a raised eyebrow but didn't question it. Yagura looked at the genin, who yelled at him and laughed. However, this laugh wasn't the usual happy laugh that the genin had heard earlier in the exams. No, this laugh was much darker and had a much more sinister note to it. The next part of the exams? He asked himself as he stroked his chin. Oh right, your objective for the second part of the Kirigakure Chunin exams is. He then proceeded to make the ram hand seal and make a grin so evil it would be burned into the minds of all those that saw it forever. To survive, Kai, Hokage's office on August 14, 52 AFK. Hiruzen Sarutobi was looking over multiple documents that were strewn across his desk. He had mission reports, civilian reports, mission requests, and even more on it. Minato, I'll never understand how you were able to finish all this shit so fast, he mumbled to himself as he continued to slave away at the work in front of him. Suddenly he looked up and saw the photos of Minato, Hashirama, and Tobirama had giant gaping cracks in them. He raised an eyebrow but then saw that the photo he had of Naruto and Hinata on his desk was totally shattered. What the hell is going on? He mumbled to himself. He, however, wasn't the only person in the village to experience something weird that afternoon. Hyuga compound. Hitomi Hyuga was sitting in her living room enjoying a nice cup of chamomile tea. She always loved to have a cup after training in the Hyuga clan dojo. She looked at all the photos of her husband Hayashi, and her daughter Hinata. The photo she was currently looking at was of them all celebrating Hinata's first birthday party. Hitomi smiled fondly at the photo when all of a sudden the glass frame shattered. What the fuck? Hitomi exclaimed as she picked up her teacup. However, the series of unfortunate events were not over for her. When she went to take a sip of her tea, the handle broke, causing the cup to fall all over the floor. Ah! She screamed as she tried to keep scolding hot tea off of her. Hitomi, what's wrong? The Hyuga matriarch didn't have to look up to know that her husband was talking to her. She looked at a photograph of Hinata and Naruto the day they got their ninja headbands, only to see a crack going straight down the middle, separating Naruto and Hinata. Something's wrong with the kids, she whispered to herself. What did you say? Hayashi asked from the doorway. I couldn't he. Hayashi, something happened to the kids, she screamed. Hayashi's eyes widened slightly as he watched his wife jump out of the chair she was sitting in and sprint out of the room. Honey, what happened? He asked to his wife, who was currently running to their bedroom to change out of her training clothes. All I know is that you screamed and now you're changing. Hayashi, she whined while throwing off her training top only to reveal a black sports bra. My cup shattered, the picture we have of you, me, and Hinata shattered, and the picture of Naruto and Hinata has a giant cack in it going straight down the middle, she explained as she threw on a light purple long-sleeve shirt and her old green jonin vest with ton the back. Whoa Tommy-chan, aren't you looking too much into this? He asked as he watched her take off her shorts and put on her old black ninja pants. Hayashi, you simply don't understand. Something is wrong with my babies and they need me. She yelled as she strapped on her ninja pouches and put on her heeled sandals. Hitomi-chan, Naruto isn't even your Hayashi wasn't able to finish that sentence because he was silenced with the nastiest glare he had even seen in his wife. Don't you ever say that again. In fact, just for that you're cut off for at least 4 months, and you're not sleeping in the same room as me. She screamed before shining out of the compound, leaving a stunned Ichishi in her wake. Uchiha compound. Itachi, come look at this. Shursui was looking through old boxes of photos when he saw the cracked photo of Mikoto's old team. He held it up for the 9-year-old Itachi to see. Itachi raised an eyebrow at the photo since he had seen it before and it didn't have a crack in it. What happened? He asked the 11-year-old in front of him. It just cracked. I've never seen anything like it. He shouted as he thrusted the photo into Itachi's hands. That does make sense, Itachi said soundly as he looked at the photo. He then noticed that the crack went right through Minato and Mikoto. I'm bringing it to Ka-chan. Maybe she knows what happened. He then did a seerless shunshin down to where his mother was cooking lunch. Mikoto was stirring a pot when she heard glass shattering behind her. She turned her head and saw that one of the flower pots had a small crack in it. That's odd, she mumbled to herself as she walked over to the pot to inspect it. Ah, that's too bad. Naruto gave me that vase, she said with a sigh. She then paused for a moment after she thought of her favorite godson. The exams started today. I wonder how they are doing? She then shrugged her shoulders and was about to turn around until she felt a presence behind her. Ka-chan, Itachi called as he appeared in the kitchen. Mikoto turned around and looked at her oldest son with fondness, which then turned into confusion when she saw what he was holding. What's wrong, Itachi-kun? Shursui and I were looking at your old stuff when he said that this picture frame cracked in front of his very eyes. He said in his usual monotone voice. Mikoto's eyes immediately widened when she saw where the crack was. She then looked at the flower pot again. Something happened to Naruto, she whispered to herself with great alarm in her voice. What did you say, Ka-chan? Itachi asked since he was confused about what was going on. Yeah, Mikoto-ne-chan, Shursui said after he appeared into the room. Something is wrong with Naruto and Hinata, I just know it, she said in a panic as she ran up to her bedroom. She threw open the door and went straight into her closet, pulling out her old jonin uniform, which was a dark red long-sleeved shirt with black edges and the Uchiha fan on the back, a dark red belt, and pair of black pants, and a gray cloak with the Uchiha fan on the back. She pulled off her apron and put on the shirt, which she noticed was much tighter than it used to be. Ka-chan, what do you mean? I'm sure Naruto is fine, Itachi said from the doorway as not to intrude on his mother changing. Itachi, you simply don't understand. A mother knows, and right now this mother knows that Naruto and Hinata are in trouble, she yelled from the closet as she finished putting on the remainder of her old uniform. Well then we're coming too. I want to help Minato-ni-san's son, Shursui yelled as he ran to grab his ninja pouch from the kitchen table. Itachi went along with his friend's idea and grabbed his stuff from his bedroom. Mikoto sprinted out of her room and ran up to a seemingly random wall in the compound. She bit her thumb and pressed some blood onto the wall in the shake of a seal. After a few seconds of waiting, a clicking sound could be heard. She pushed open the door and grabbed all her old high-quality ninja gear, including her old chikuto. The blade was seated in a black scabbard with pink and red flower petals on it. The blade itself was made of the highest quality chakra-conducting steel that she could find. It had an overall length of around 3 feet. The blade itself was 29 inches long and the handle was 7 inches long. Mikoto looked at her straight sword fondly and tucked it into her cloak while she had a pocket for it. She closed the door and ran into the foyer of the house where she saw Shursui and Itachi waiting for her. She smiled at the older Uchiha, who smiled back. She remembered when Shursui told her that he had met Naruto. She was also glad that he had figured out whose son he was, though it was too bad the two boys haven't seen each other since. Are you both ready to go? She asked the two boys, who nodded their heads. Alright, let's get to the Hokage's office. She then disappeared in a cloud of smoke which made the boys' eyes widen. See ya, Itachi, Shursui said before disappearing from the room. Itachi grumbled about the fact that he couldn't shunshin that far and how he had to run to the Hokage's office. Hokage's office. Sarutobi was once again sitting at his desk doing paperwork. He had just replaced the picture frames that were in the office. But he couldn't shake the feeling that something bad was about to happen. Suddenly the door to his office was blown off its hinges, which caused a cloud of dust to appear all thought out the room. Sarutobi's eyes winded when he saw all the A and B guards flash into the room and form a protective perimeter around the old Kage. Sarutobi, where are my babies? Hitomi shouted as she entered the room in a huff. Hitomi-chan, what seems to be the matter? He nervously asked the worked-up Hyuga. While not nearly as terrifying as an angry Kushina, Hitomi's temper was something that you simply didn't want to mess with on a regular basis. When were the Chunin exams and the Kirigakure supposed to start? She asked quickly as she entered the office, not fazed at all by the ANBU guards that were there. Not seeing an immediate threat anymore, Sarutobi signaled for his ANBU to retreat, which they did immediately. Well, they should have started today. Why? He asked the mother, who was about to answer but was beat to it by someone else. Something happened to Naruto and Hinata. Both people turned to the door to see Mikoto dressed in her old ninja attire. She walked into the office with an air of confidence around which didn't go unnoticed by the other occupants of the room. Wow, Itachi, I didn't know your mom could look so cool, Shursui said to a panting Itachi who nodded his head. Mikoto-chan, Itachi-kun, Shursui-kun, it's good to see all of you, the aged leader said with a smile on his face. Mikoto, I didn't think I'd see that cloak again. Minato sure did go all out for it, he said with a twinkle in his eyes. Yeah, this was one of the best birthday gifts I think I've ever gotten, she said with a smile on her face. The smiles didn't last very long as the tension and urgency that was felt earlier soon returned. Sarutobi collected the documents on his desk and placed them into a pile. Unless you both are here to take on missions again, I'm going to have to ask, why are all of you here? He looked up at the group, who looked back at him with fierce eyes. This morning I was drinking some tea. While I was letting cool, a photo of Naruto and Hinata I had on my table cracked right down the middle. I then picked up my teacup, which then shattered in my hand. That's when I knew something was wrong. Hitomi explained to the group, who all nodded their heads. I was cooking lunch while I let Shursui and Itachi look through some of my old belongings when I noticed that a vase that Naruto gave me. Itachi then appeared and handed me a picture of the old Team 7, which had a deep crack in the frame. I looked at it closer and noticed that the crack was separating myself and Minato. That's when I realized that something was wrong, Mikoto explained to the group, who once again nodded their heads. Sarutobi rubbed his eyes and groaned into his hands. All the picture frames in this office shattered. Something happened, but I don't know what it was, he said with a frown. Let us go to Kiri, Hitomi shouted as though it was the easiest thing in the world. I can't do that, Sarutobi said firmly to the woman and children in front of him. Why not? Shursui shouted in defiance. Before Sarutobi could answer, Itachi made his presence known. In the Konoha Charter, it says that unless directed by the Hokage, ninjas can't go out of the village for backup or other purposes. Thank you, Itachi, Sarutobi said with a fond smile. But you know something is wrong. Just send us to go get them, Hitomi yelled at Sarutobi, who steeled his expressions. I don't have any tangible evidence that suggests that they are in trouble. I can't afford to just send out a team of retired ninjas and 2 fresh Chunin out to Kirigakure when for all we know nothing is wrong. I know this hard, but my hands are tied, Sarutobi explained with great pain and sadness in his heart. He too wanted to know what was going on, but as the Hokage he couldn't do anything. Damn it, Minato, Mikoto mumbled to herself, which caused everyone to look at her with a raised eye. That rule wasn't always a thing, she said with a frown on her face. What do you mean it wasn't always a rule? Hitomi asked the Uchiha with a raised eyebrow. Oh come on, Hitomi. You of all people should remember what happened, Mikoto sassed at the mother, who glared at her back. Well, since you forgot, I'll just have to tell you what happened. Flashback 44 FK. A 19-year-old Mikoto was sitting alone in her relatively new house with her newborn baby Itachi. She was swaddling the baby in a blue blanket. She looked at her baby and sighed to herself. That asshole. She cursed and glanced at the clock. Of course is out drinking again, she said quietly to her sleeping baby. She hated the fact that Fugaka wanted nothing to do with actually raising Itachi. He had been so happy about that fact that he now has an air that he forgot about the fact that needed to help take care of him as well. Oh well, I guess I shouldn't be surprised that he's acting this way, she mumbled under her breath as she continued to swaddle Itachi. He always was an ass. Mikoto looked up to see her best friend, Minato Namike, standing in front of her with a kind smile on his face. Held out his arms to take Itachi off of the tired mother's hand. She smiled back at him and gave her only son to him. I didn't see you flash in, she commented while she stretched her arms. I didn't know who was here, so I just used the shunshin they taught us back when we were in BU. Plus you know that it's not perfect yet, he said quietly as not to wake up the sleeping baby in his arms. Minato, your perfect and my perfect are 2 totally different things. The fact that it works at all is a miracle. You never with all that space-time mumbo-jumbo, she joked to the man who smirked at her. Don't worry, it's perfectly safe. Hopefully it will be ready to use in the next few months to a year. Right now I can only flash to a point that's in a half-mile radius. My goal is to be able to do it from anywhere in the world. He smiled at his friend, who smiled back. The pair let a comfortable silence be kept in between them. Minato was rocking the baby close to his chest and Mikoto watched with both fondness and a hint of regret on her face. Kami, I wish that was your baby and not his, she whispered on the verge of tears. Minato looked at his dear friend and frowned. He knew how much she loved him. Hell, all of their friends could see how much she loved him, but it just couldn't happen. Miko, no Minato, you simply don't understand. She sobbed into her hands. He's never here. Yes, I understand he's a prominent ninja, but Minato, he's almost 8 months old, and he's probably only held him 5 or 6 times. Hell, you, Kushina, Hitomi, Shikoku and everyone else have held him more than he has. He was supposed to be yours. She cried while trying not to make up the baby. I was supposed to be yours. The discussion was stopped by the cry of Itachi, who was awoken from his slumber due to Mikoto's cry. She instinctually went to grab her baby, but Minato was already trying to put the baby back to sleep. Shhhh, it's okay, Itachi. He cooed quietly at the child, who opened his eyes and looked into Minato's blue ones. He smiled at the baby, who started giggling back at him. Mikoto watched the scene with great sadness as Minato was able to lull baby Itachi back to sleep in a matter of moments. Minato, Fugaka has you locked into a marriage contract. A clan marriage contract, to be exact. I can't go around that without either revealing my father's name or being Hokage. And even if I were Hokage, I wouldn't be able to do much about it. There would need to be an event where you or your children were to be put in serious harm or danger by the clan. That's the only way the Hokage can step in and cancel the contract. While Fugaku is an ass, he's not technically putting you or little Itachi here in mortal danger. I'm sorry, but I can't do anything. He exasperatedly while rocking Itachi slowly. I should have fought harder for you. I should have used the Rasengan and the Haraishin. Minato, you couldn't have done anything more. He poisoned you before the fight, you couldn't use your Sharingan, and Sarutobi said you couldn't reveal either of those jutsus. I just wish things were different. I'm sorry, she said with a frown on her face. No, it's okay, I wanted to be with you too, but I think I have something really good going with Kushina. It's been a really rough year, and she's been a real blessing, he said with a small smile on his face. Who knows, maybe in a few years our kids will be the best of friends. Yeah, maybe they will, she said hopefully. Minato gave Itachi back to Mikoto, who gratefully accepted her baby with a smile on her face. Minato went into the kitchen and made 2 cups of tea. After a few minutes, he came out with them in his hand and sat them down onto the table. What are you doing here anyway? Mikoto asked her friend, who smiled at her. I wanted to visit my godson. He smirked at her, which made the woman laugh. Oh really? She said with a raised eyebrow. Or did you just want to get a sneak of me possibly feeding him? She smirked when the teen's face went totally red. It's not like that, he stammered as he tried to fight his blush, much to the amusement of Mikoto. The laughter was silenced when the door to the house was slammed open by someone. Minato shot up from his chair and pulled out a 3-pronged kunai and stood defensively in front of Mikoto, who was shielding Itachi with her body. Mikoto? Hitomi screamed into the house as she searched for her friend. Hitomi? Minato asked as he slightly lowered his kunai. How do we know it's really you? He asked defensively. Oh, cut the shit, Blondie, it's about Kushina, she's kidnapped. She yelled at the man, who went pale. What do you mean she's kidnapped? Mikoto shouted, which caused the baby to once again start crying. I was coming back from a mission and I ran into one for people. She was just assigned to Mitsubu Ben Hishai, Jonin, who specializes in fire and lightning jutsu. What did he say? Minato stressed the point he was trying to make, which made Hitomi continue talking. Well, he said that they were ambushed in the land of fields and are possibly in the land of rock. She explained to the duo, who were too stunned to speak. Alright, Minato said after a few beats of silence. Hitomi, we're going to go to the Hokage and tell him this information. Mikoto, we will be back, Minato said with a large amount of authority. How about I'm going to rescue Kushina and you can report back to Sarutobi? Hitomi said defiantly as she looked at Mikoto, who was on the exact same wavelength as her. Minato looked at Mikoto, whose Sharingan was spinning dangerously fast. However, activated his own set of eyes and looked back at her. I can't let you go with Hitomi. She just got back from a mission and you haven't been on active duty since before Itachi was born. This is a very bad idea, Mikoto. What if you get badly injured? What if you get kidnapped? He asked the mother, who glared at him harder, not saying a single word. The duo continued to and took Itachi from her, already knowing what she was going to do. I can't change your mind, but please don't do anything stupid. He sighed as he bounced a now wide-awake Itachi on his hip. I won't, she said with a smile as she sprinted up to her bedroom to get changed. While Mikoto was getting changed, Minato was grabbing all of Itachi's supplies with Hitomi, who decided to help her friend and put together an overnight bag. So what are you going to do with little Itachi here? She asked the blonde, who shrugged his shoulders and continued to put supplies into the bag. I don't know, he answered as he bounced the baby on his hip. I'll take him back to my apartment and see what Sarutobi says. After that I'll bring him to either Shikaku or Shibi, he said with a smirk as he thought of his friends taking care of a baby. Alright, I'm ready, Mikoto said from the door. Good, we need to get out of here as fast as possible. Hitomi smiled at Minato, who smiled back and hugged Mikoto, who hugged him tightly. Take good care of Itachi-kun, he loves tummy rubs. She whispered to the blonde, who nodded his head. Be safe, he called out to his 2 friends, who nodded their heads before disappearing out of the compound. Once he knew they were out of the compound, Minato looked down at Itachi, who was smiling back at him. He then put the baby bag on his shoulder and walked out of the house. Alright, Itachi-kun, let's go see Sarutobi-sama. He then disappeared in a yellow flash to the Hokage's tower. Flashback end. Oh, that's what you're talking about, Hitomi said as she recalled what Mikoto was talking about. Yeah, that was a crazy day, she said with a small smile. Shursui turned to Itachi, who was still blushing from the memory, and whispered into his ear. You got to stay with Minato and Ai-chan? Yes, he did, Shursui-kun, Mikoto turned her head to smile at the boy. He stayed with Minato-kun multiple times when I had to go on missions. There isn't anyone I trusted Itachi with more than him, she said with fondness and pride in her voice. Why is it that the young are always taken from us so early? Sarutobi said with a frown. It's because of what happened after that story, which is why I won't let you go find Naruto and Hinata. What happened after Minato-ni-chan came to your office? Shursui asked the Kage, who chuckled. That's a story for another day. But just know that both Minato and I were not happy with the two of them for doing that, and both of them got reprimand once Minato brought all three of them home. Sarutobi explained while giving the two women in the room a very nasty glare. You know, I wonder what happened that woman we met? Hitomi asked to the group, who shrugged their shoulders. I think her name was Konan. She was a very interesting person. Mikoto remembered meeting the women when they were captured and found her to be very nice and a pleasant person to talk to. While I would love to reminisce more, I do have work to do. I'm going to have to ask you all to leave because I have a meeting in the next 20 minutes that I need to prepare for, Sarutobi said with a kind smile as he shooed the group out of his office. When the group exited the tower, they all decided to go to Ichiraku Ramen to see Mikoto's third teammate. When they explained to Tucci what had happened to them that morning, he was worried deeply about the two children and decided that their ramen would be on the house for the day. I hope they are both okay, he said as he served the group their ramen. Yeah, Mikoto whispered into her bowl. I hope so too. Deep in water country, they are gaining on us. Naruto screamed to Hinata, who was slightly behind him. They were currently sprinting across a forest trying to get as far away from Kiri ninjas. Why are they even chasing us? Hinata asked as she fired an arrow behind her today and slowed down the ninjas as much as possible. She watched as the arrow hit one of them in the leg and made him fall out of the trees. Water style, water ball jutsus. Dodge. Naruto yelled as he dodged the water balls that were hurtling towards the two children. Lightning style, lightning tag. Naruto sent out bolt after bolt of lighting towards the ninjas in an attempt to give Hinata some time to recover and get back onto her feet after getting hit with one of the water balls. Hinata, are you okay? He asked as he wanted her rub her ankle. Yeah, just hit my ankle on a branch. I should be fine, she called out as they started running again. Water style, water whip. Naruto was able to grab Hinata and dodge the whip of water that was about to hit them. The whip instead hit a tree branch and caused it to splinter into hundreds of tiny wooden splinters. Hinata, how many are there? He asked as he tried to figure out a way to stop the ninjas that were pursuing them. 5 all around high Chunin chakra reserves, she answered after she activated her bloodline. Okay, here's the plan. I'm gonna make a stun tag. I want you to make some clones and hide in the trees. Get ready to shoot them once they are stunned. Do you understand? He asked as he grabbed all the healing equipment that he had. She nodded her head and summoned 4 clones to appear. All 5 Hinatas disappeared into the trees waiting for the enemies to be stunned. After 3 minutes of furiously drawing seals, Naruto had the entire area covered in stun tags. Now all he had to do was wait for the ninjas who should have been arriving soon. Water style, rapid bubble spray. Hundreds upon hundreds of bubbles started appearing in the trees. Naruto looked at the bubbles with a raised eyebrow until they widened when he heard the explosions. Poop! He screamed as he ducked for cover. Thankfully his plan was still semi-intact due to some of the bubbles landing on some of the tags. Hinata now! Naruto screamed as he held up the ram handle once all 5 men were in the range of the remaining tags. Kai! The 5 ninjas immediately felt an eclectic shock run their bodies which momentarily caused them to stop moving. That was when Hinata and her clones started shooting the men in vital areas. Once all the men were thought to be dead, Hinata came out of the trees and ran up to Naruto. Alright, they are dead, we need to get out of dash. Naruto was abruptly cut off by one of the ninjas who hadn't died yet. If I have to die then so do you. One of the ninjas screamed as he started pouring all his chakra into his final jutsu. Water style, exploding bubble. No! Naruto shouted while trying to get to Hinata, but it was too late. The massive explosion rocketed the children in separate direction across the forest. Naruto felt his leg snap as he was sent flying into a tree at a very high velocity. Once Naruto was able to regain his bearings, he immediately noticed that he was at least a mile away from where he originally was. Hinata, he shouted as he frantically tried to find his friend. He stretched out his senses as far as they could go but still couldn't he find her. Hinata! He screamed as he started running toward where they last were. He could feel the pain in his leg but he chose to ignore it. He finally got to the center of the blast and tired finding her again but still couldn't seem to locate her. Hinata! Naruto collapsed to his knees with tears in his eyes. His breathing jagged and labored. Each breath coming in more painful than the last. He tried to stand up on shaky legs but simply couldn't muster the strength to do so. Right now, all Naruto could think about was his promise to Hitomi. All he had to do was protect Hinata and stay with her. Now, Naruto was injured in the middle of water country. However, Naruto didn't care about where he was. All he knew in that moment was that Hinata wasn't there with him. All he knew was that Hinata and himself were now totally separated. September 23, 52 AFK 1 month after the Kirigakure Chunin exams. Deep underneath Konoha, Danzo Shimura smiled to himself as he read the most recent reports that had been left on his desk. While he knew that the plan to eliminate the genin that were in the Chunin exams was a gamble, he was quite pleased that it worked out in the end. He placed the papers down and spun around in his chair to face a large window that overlooked the massive ravine that was also home to Konoha's route. Catwalks were used everywhere to connect the large multi-story platforms that stretched across both sides of the jagged granite walls of the ravine. There were multiple overheads that were used as training grounds, dormitories for his forces, and multiple places to get food. At the north end of the ravine there was a 430-foot-tall underground waterfall that flowed into a 77-foot-wide river. Route! He shouted as he admired the facility that he had created. Immediately, two men wearing blank masks, gray NBU armor, and black long-sleeved shirts revealed themselves. Both bowed down to their master and saluted at him, which seemed to go unnoticed by the man. Summon the council. He forcefully commanded to the two agents, who immediately left to complete their given task. He knew that this meeting was going to be a long and tedious one due to the nature of information that was being brought up. He chuckled to himself as he tried to picture the look on Sarutobi's face when he told him that 14 genin and 5 jonin died during the Chunin exams. Oh well, he mused to himself while walking towards one of the exits that would lead him to Hokage Tower. I'll have plenty of time to think about it during my walk. Kami knows this village is massive. Konoha was a giant circle with a diameter of about 65 miles. 1. It was divided into 6 major sections, which were downtown Konoha, Shinobi Plaza, Civilian Center, the clan districts, the industrial district, and the training grounds. Downtown Konoha, or better known as the cone due to its cone-like design around the Hokage monument. This was where most of the business affairs and really important business affairs took place. A lot of local companies, both domestic and abroad, were housed. There were nice restaurants, cafes, banks, parks, and even civilian gyms. This was also where the Hokage's office and residence was, along with the Ninja Academy, Ninja Registry, Konoha Treasury, Konoha Housing and Development, the Konoha Hospital, and the TI Department. Then there was Shinobi Plaza. This was where most of the Jonin and some of the Chunin ninjas lived due to its abundance of high-quality housing that was only offered to ninjas. Due to the high number of ninjas that lived here, a lot of the shops were catered towards their tastes, such as grab-and-go dining, weapon shops, same-day gear repair stores, and dojos run by retired ninjas. There were also some bars ran by local retired ninjas scattered around the district as well. For ninja parents, there were even ninja daycare places that were open 24 hours for parents who get called for missions in the early hours or late-night patrols. There were even services that would shunshin kids to either a local school or to the Konoha Academy. 2. Next to Shinobi Plaza was the more heavily populated Civilian Center. This was where most of Konoha's 2.8 million citizens lived. Civilian Way was one of the most diverse areas in all of Konoha. This was where civilians, ninja, and immigrants alike lived, shopped, and worked. This is also where the majority of civilian-owned business were located. There were local gyms, breweries, grocery stores, and bookstores were. Since the majority of Konoha lived here, there was also where almost all of the appliance stores, orphanages, and pet adoption places were located. This is also where the entertainment center of Konoha was. While there was a movie theater downtown, most of the movie theaters, arcades, and bars on the opposite side of Shinobi Plaza was the clan districts. The districts, as they have been known to be called, was where all the major clans or extremely wealthy people lived. Some of the smaller clans that only had around 200 to 350 members had smaller plots of land, whereas clans with numbers in the 500 had much larger plots of land. The largest of the districts being the Uchiha district, Senju district, Inoshikicho districts, and the Inuzuka districts. The largest being the Nara district due to its large expanses of land for their deer forests. The Aburame clan also had a large amount of land, however they chose to live in one large compound. This was one of the more floral areas of Konoha due to all the rare and exotic flora that the clans would grow. On the right hand of the civilian center was the industrial corner. This was places like textile factories, meat processing places, Konoha Electrical, Konoha's water processing plants, along with other things. This was also where the more nefarious parts of Konoha were. The famous Red Light District is also located here. On the other side of the village were all of the training grounds. There are 50 training grounds of varying sizes, the largest one being Training Ground 44, better known as the Forest of Death. It took Danzo 25 minutes to walk out of his route base. He looked around and found himself inside the back room of a coffee shop in the middle of the industrial district. He looked around and grabbed a small cup of water. He then shined to the front door of the council chamber, and opened it to find only half the council present. Where are the rest of them? He asked his old teammate Koharu Utadano, who shrugged her shoulders. I don't know, the ANBU only said that there would be a council meeting. She replied before biting into an apple she had been about to eat. Why did you call it? She posed to the man, who gave her a nod in reply. Well, you already know Hiruzen won't be pleased that his work is getting interrupted for an unscheduled meeting. Neither will Fugaku, for that matter. Danzo surveyed the current members of the council that were assembled and frowned. He saw Akimichi Choza, the head of the Akimichi clan, Inochi Yamanaka, head of the Yamanaka clan and deputy head of the TI division, Shikaku Nara, head of the Nara clan, Shibi Aburame, head of the Aburame clan, and Hayashi Hyuga, head of the Hyuga clan. Well, I guess they'll just have to be mad now, won't they? Danzo muttered as he sat in his seat next to his old teammate. It'll be good for Hiruzen. He needs to work those old bones every once in a while. PFT like you're one to call someone old, Danzo. Choza grumbled under his breath to his two friends, who quietly chuckled. Danzo, who heard the men and chose to ignore them. 10 minutes passed before the door opened and Hiruzen Sarutobi walked into the council chambers. He quietly walked up to his seat and sat down, releasing a breath. Who called this meeting? He asked the collective group, who all pointed at Danzo, who rolled his left eye due to his right being under a bandage. Sarutobi looked at the man with a raised eyebrow. Are they correct and say you called this meeting, Danzo? He asked the man, who once again nodded his head. Yes, it is true. However, we should wait for the others to arrive before we begin. He stated calmly. Fine, Hiruzen said with a frown as he looked at the door and waited for anyone else to arrive. After waiting another 10 minutes, the council chamber doors opened, and in walked Mikoto Uchiha along with some Inuzuka. Mikoto smiled at everyone and walked to sit in the Uchiha clan seat. She folded her blue dress and sat down, much to the surprise of everyone. Hello everyone, Fugaka couldn't make it today due to a meeting at the police force. So he asked me to fill in for him, she said sweetly, which made everyone nod their heads, accepting the explanation as to why she was there. Very well, now that everyone is here we can start the meeting, Sarutobi announced as he banged a gavel on the table. Danzo, the floor is yours. Danzo looked at everyone in the room before standing up to give his address. He knew that some of them wouldn't care about the fact that some of the genin died in the exams, but he also knew that some of them would care. He himself was curious about the reactions of a few people. Thank you, Hokage-sama. He stood up straight and let out a slow breath before finally speaking. This morning, I received a report from one of our spies in the field that was quite alarming. He paused for a second so that he could gauge the response in the room. So far everyone remained quiet neutral, so he continued. I received word that all 14 genin and 5 jonin that we sent to the Kirigakure Chunin exams have been killed in Kirigakure. Almost as soon as his lips closed, the chamber was in uproar. Mikoto had to use every ounce of strength she had to not break down openly in front of the entire council. She didn't want to believe it. In fact, she couldn't believe that both Naruto and Hinata were dead. She had trained them herself. She believed that both were ready to participate. Hayashi was far more restrained than his wife's best friend. He was also reeling from the fact that Hinata could very well be dead, his firstborn child dead far before her time. He let a single tear fall from his ironclad facade. Kami no. Please Kami no. He thought somberly to himself. Sarutobi had his head in his hands. Kami, please be with me, he thought to himself, as his brain tried to come up with something to say to the council. At first he thought to deny the report altogether, but that soon left him. He had a sneaking suspicion that Danzo was right. He just needed all the details before he could figure out what to do. Danzo, what you say is a very serious claim. One that could start a war, the Kage said with authority. It would be wise if you produced evidence that supports this claim. Of course, Sarutobi. He then produced a piece of paper from his pocket, and proceeded to read the report to the council, who all went deathly silent so that they could hear every word. Danzo-sama, I'm sorry that it has taken so long to report to you. Things in Kirigakure have become quite messy. Everything was going smoothly up until the Chunin exams. That's when everything went wrong. No one was allowed to be anywhere near the shore of the departed, the location of the second exam. Security was very tight. From what I could see, everything looked to be fine with the exams. Then all of a sudden a giant explosion rocked the entire city. Windows shattered, buildings shook, and a large fireball could be seen at the lake. It was chaos after that. A couple hours after the explosion, it was revealed that all the genin teams that were participating in the exams had perished in the explosion. The weird part is that all the jonin senseis also died too. However, they looked to be murdered with extreme precision. The Mizukage said that it was a group of terrorists known as the Kage clan were responsible. The Kage clan is actually a group of bloodline users who are protesting for more rights in the village. They vehemently deny having anything to do with the attack. This then sparked a political feud between the Mizukage and Kage clan. After 2 weeks, the Mizukage had all of them murdered and their bodies hung in the village center. It was here where the Mizukage announced that all members of a clan that possessed a bloodline were to write their names on a list and have to wear a special badge to show that they were a bloodline user. Danzo-sama, things aren't looking good here in Kiri, but I'll keep you updated for the good of Konoha. SP 3453. When Danzo finished reading the report, there were multiple reactions from the room. Hiruzen once again was rubbing his hands over his face while his two teammates were still trying to process the information. The clan heads were much more expressive. Mikoto was almost openly weeping while Hayashi had his fists tightly clenched, to the point where they were almost drawing blood. Choza, Inochi, and Shikaku had their heads bowed in silent prayer. Sim was growling and had made claw marks in the wood on the desk. Shibi remained rather neutral. After a few beats of silence, Shikaku tilted his head towards the Hokage and spoke. We need to figure out the people who died so that we can have proper funerals for them. He spoke somberly. Wait, Mikoto interjected before the council. Shouldn't we at least go to Kiri and confirm that they are in fact dead? She asked the group, who looked at her with raised eyebrows. Why would we waste precious manpower on people who we know are ash in the wind? Kohara asked the women who steeled herself. We have an eyewitness account that all of them died. He saw the bodies. Mikoto is right. Hayashi said neutrally. We should at least bring the bodies back so that there's something to bury. No. Everyone looked at the sandane with shock. Everyone knew that if there was someone who would want to make the hearts of the loved ones just a little bit easier, it was him. Sarutobi knew what Mikoto wanted to do. He knew that by requesting a team to be sent out that she would beg to be on it so that she could search for Naruto herself. Hitomi would do the same thing if she was given the chance. He simply couldn't allow that to happen. Like Kohara said, the bodies are already ash and have long since blown into the setting sun. What we need to do is figure out what our response to our genin being murdered is. He glanced over at Danzo who, like always, had a plan of action ready. I say we declare war on them. In fact, in their weakened state, we would be able to destroy them. Danzo suggested, much to the ire of the rest of the council. Hokage-sama, that is not the best course of action, and you know it. Shikaka interjected loudly. Our forces are still recovering from the Kyuubi attack 4 years ago. If we were to go to war now, it would be disastrous. He said loudly to get the point across. Not true. Danzo shouted at the Nara clan head. We have enough and it would be a short campaign. Danzo, we lost nearly half of our ANBU and a quarter of our forces 4 years ago. You must be out of your goddamn mind. Shikaku argued back. At the end of the Third War we had 5,500 genin and chunin. Add on an additional 2,400 jonin that did return to the village, and you have 7,900 genin, chunin, and jonin. Plus 500 ANBU and you have 8,400 total shinobi. That number grew to 10,700 because of the ad campaigns the Yondaime made. On the night of the Kyuubi attack, we lost not only the Yondaime, we also lost the Red Death as well. Add them with the other 2,675 ninjas we lost that night. We simply can't get into another war. He explained to the council, which caused all of their eyes to widen. 3. Wow, I didn't know our forces were that bad off. Choza said quietly to Inochi, who nodded. If only you knew, my old friend. If only you knew, the blonde thought quietly to himself. Shikaku, that's enough, you've made your case known to the council. Sarutobi nodded his head at the Nara leader, who nodded back. He'd be a good candidate for Jonin commander, he thought to himself. Like Shikaku said, our forces would be stretched too thin. We will instead put heavy sanctions on the land of water and try to start pressuring the water daimyo into getting his country under control. Sarutobi suggested the group and got numerous nods and affirmative grunts. Good, now is there anything anyone would like bring up? He asked the body, and no one raised their hands. Alright then, I hereby declare this meeting adjourned. Hayashi, Mikoto, Shikaku, and Inochi, please meet me in my office. He then got out of his chair and walked out of the council chamber and down the hallway to his office. When the elderly Kage reached his office, he let out a loud groan. I'm getting too old for this shit. He mumbled to his empty office. He then summoned 3 ANBU and had them fetch Kakashi Yugao, and, after the 2 agents left, he grabbed the bottles of sake and whiskey from a locked cabinet and placed them on the desk. By the time he sat down in his chair, he heard the door open. Please come in, he said quietly as he took off his hat and rubbed his wrinkled face with his hands. Hayashi looked at their leader and frowned at the poor man's expense. He was sure that dealing with a potential war was not easy. Then again, dealing with the potential loss of a daughter wasn't easy either. When Inochi and Shikaku walked into the office and saw not only the state of their leader, but also the bottles and cups on the table, they immediately knew that something was very, very wrong. Then they took a look at Mikoto, and those feelings were simply confirmed. Something very, very bad had happened. Mikoto was shaking rather violently when she entered the office. The office that Naruto used to work at. The office Minato used to work out of. The office she would go to talk to Minato. The office she would pick Naruto up from after his lessons with Sarutobi. And right now, she didn't know what to do. Right now she was stuck. Minato was already dead. She lost him 4 years ago. But in his loss she got Naruto. True, she's only known the small child for a little over 8 months. But to her those 8 months were the happiest months she's had in years. She actually felt like a mom when she was with Naruto. Even Itachi thought of him as a sibling during the 2 times they ever interacted. Now he was gone. No, she couldn't believe it. There was no way that both of her precious blondes were gone. She had trained Naruto with everything she had for the past 8 months. Was it everything she knew? No, but it should have been enough. No. There simply was no way that Naruto was dead. Silence was kept in the room for a long time. It was a silence that only came before a storm. Like swirling mist lurking in the depths of a swamp. The kind of silence that told you that you were in for a long road ahead. This strange silence was broken by the ANBU who had brought in Kakashi, Yugao, and Hitomi. All 3 of them noticed the strange vibe of the room and were quite confused. The silence was kept until Sarutobi gestured for them to sit in the chairs that had been brought out for them. Hokage-sama, why are we gathered here? Kakashi asked while looking around at the group of people that were sitting next to him. The Hokage knew that this was going to be a long and difficult conversation. He knew that everyone in this room was going to kill him because of the decisions he had made in the past 10 months. But they simply had to be done. He took a deep breath while taking out of the cups and poured himself some whiskey. He then gestured to the greater group and was supplied when Inochi, Shikaku, Mikoto, and Hayashi took a glass and started pouring themselves glasses of alcohol. Before we begin, I must seal the room. The information that is about to be said could very well cause an uproar in the streets, the old man announced as he went through hand seals to seal the room. Once that was finished, he took a sip of his glass and once again signed. He then looked at everyone and began what he knew would be one of the worst discussions in his life. All of you are gathered here because you both know of two of the genin that went to Kirigakure no Sato to compete in the Chunin exams. Those genin were Hinata Hyuga and Naruto Uzumaki. He paused so that everyone was on the same page. Yes, we know they went. Did something happen? Hitomi asked the aged man as she got a sinking feeling in her stomach. As of this afternoon, we received word that all of the genin and jonin that went to the exams were killed during the second stage of the exam. No, Yugao whispered quietly as she gripped Kakashi's hand tightly. We can then conclude that both Naruto Uzumaki and Hinata Hyuga perished in the Kirigakure Chunin exams. Hiruzen somberly spoke as he looked at the portiere of Minato in his office. I'm sorry, my boy. I'm so sorry I couldn't protect your family again. There was a brief pause before all hell broke loose in the office. No. 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 Hiruzen, stop the lies and tell me where my babies are. Hitomi screamed at the elderly man who simply sighed to himself. Hide him. No. You listen here, you little shit. You expect me to believe that my baby is dead? Where's the proof? She hollered. She had to be restrained by her husband who was doing his best to remain semi-calm. Danzo read. Oh, here we go with your fucking sleeve of a teammate. Yugo said as she rolled her eyes at her boss. It's always Danzo this and Danzo that. You know we've been running around for the past 6 months doing mission after mission for fucking Danzo. Now you're telling us that the only shred of evidence that we have that says this is true comes from him? She shouted. Look, I understand that all of you are quite upset. Upset? Mikoto screamed while flailing her chakra. She balled up her fists at even accidents activated her Sharingan. I was upset when Fugaku swindled my parents into arranging a marriage between me and him. I was upset when you told Minato after he was poisoned that he still had to have a handicap on his skills when facing Fugaku for my hand in marriage. I was upset when I found out that you had hid my godson from me for 4 years. Right now? Upset doesn't even begin to cover how I'm feeling. The Uchiha matriarch screamed at the man who bowed his head in shame. This shouldn't have happened in the first place. Inochi said quietly but was heard by everyone in the room. The train of thought was silenced a nasty glare from the aged Kage. How did it happen? Kakashi said stoically. Yugao squeezed his hand, he squeezed back. It took 20 minutes to explain to the group the report from Danzo, and what the council decided to do because of it. Hitomi for the first time in her life agreed with Danzo. She wanted to raise hell and slaughter all of Kirigakure. Kakashi and Yugao were just numb to it all. They didn't think that this could happen. There was so much that they were going to do with Naruto. They had already requested off for his birthday, and they were going to treat him to an actual birthday party with cake and presents. Now they couldn't. They simply couldn't. I want to lead the team to confirm the kill, Kakashi said with determination and hope in his voice. I'm afraid I can't let you do that, Kakashi. There simply is no need for it. The report said that they were all incinerated instantly, Hiruzen said firmly as he took another sip of his drink. With all due respect, sir, I don't care. Kakashi spat, much to the surprise of everyone in the room. Excuse me? Hiruzen narrowed his eyes at the gray-haired scarecrow. Whenever it has come to Naruto, and you, it's always been about what we can't do to help him. Kakashi said with a nasty bite to his voice. When Yugao tried to adopt him, it was a no. When we told you that both Minato and Kushina told us to raise him after they died, and you still refused. After countless beating, trips to the hospital, and 4 near deaths, and you still didn't let us dose anything. So I'm sorry if I'm not very trusting of you and Naruto right now. Hiruzen sat in shame as he thought about all of his actions over the past 4 years. All the times he had decided to leave Naruto in the orphanage. It was the best decision for the village. Right. Even though he didn't know anymore. We don't have the manpower to just let you and 5 others go gallivanting off to Kiri to look for something that simply doesn't exist anymore. But just for you, Kakashi, I'll declare them as MIA for the next 2 months. If they somehow show up to the village in the next 2 months, Sarutobi said with a hope to get some positive feedback from the group. I can't believe you. Hitomi said quietly as she shined out of the office and back to the Hyuga compound. Hayashi immediately went after her. Kakashi and Yugao looked at each other and also left the room to retreat back to their apartment so that they could drive. Mikoto glared Sarutobi and shined back to the Uchiha district, leaving Sarutobi alone with Inochi and Shikaku. You could have handled that better, Shikaku finally said to the elderly man who glared at him. They all were just trying to process it. You don't have to worry about insubordination or them deserting the village. Good, Kami knows we've already lost enough power. Now we don't have a Jinchuriki. Hiruzen said with his head in his hands. I don't think they are dead. I think you are underestimating Naruto and Hinata. Shikaku stated matter-of-factly. It would make our lives a lot easier if they were still alive. Inoichi grumbled as he sipped his drink. Yes, Sarutobi said as he turned around to look at his home. Even Kami weeps for the fallen, he said as he gestured to the heavy rain that was falling out of the sky. Kami, may the departed rest in peace. Shikaku said as he lifted his glass up to pay respects. Hear, hear. Konoha's civilian center. While the meeting with Sarutobi and the other took place, Danzo was once again on the move. Right now he was enjoying a walk in the civilian center. He found that this part of Konoha was much more pleasant to be in than the others for various reasons. A little over 20 minutes he looked out of the corner of his eye and saw that the windows of one of the local orphanages were slightly ajar at different angles. He smirked to himself as he walked up the stairs and entered the building. It was a medium-sized building with 3 floors and a basement. There were nice wood furnishings, but nothing to fancy due to the amount of children that were always running around. He walked up to the front desk and smiled at the attendant who looked at him. She was a short young girl around the age of 22 who had dark blonde hair and green eyes. She wore a white long-sleeved shirt and black leggings and flats. Hello, I couldn't help but notice that your windows were all open at odd angles. Are your rooms not equally heated and cooled? He asked the lady at the desk who immediately looked terrified. I'll have to go talk to the matron. She should be able to answer your question. She stuttered to the man who grinned even more. If you could, that would be great. He slyly said to the girl who immediately scurried away. His eyes lingered on her figure as she sped to the matron's office. It only took a second for a tall brown-haired woman to walk out of the office and smile at him. Ah, Danzo-sama. It's good to see that people still care about the children, she said with a conniving smile on her face. Why don't we talk in my office? She said as she gestured for him to meet in her office. That would be quite wonderful, Faharu-san. He walked into the office and took a seat. I see you have some things for me, Faharu? He asked once the door was closed. Yes, Danzo-sama, she said as she pulled out 2 vanilla folders from the inside of her desk. Meet Tenten and Rock Lee. She pushed the folders towards the man who examined them closely. Tenten is fond of throwing things and has very good natural accuracy, while Lee is a natural-born fighter. Though he doesn't seem to have an chakra. Danzo looked at the 2 children and gained maliciously. He then pulled out a coin purse and placed it onto the desk. He looked at the woman who grinned at him. Both will make fine additions to the roots of our village. Thank you, Faharu-san. Your hard work always brings you nice rewards, he said cryptically as he stood up from the desk. He started making his way to the door but stopped right before. You know the place to drop them off, correct? He asked Amabara, who scoffed at him. That's what I thought, he said as he left the office after closing the door behind him. Once Danzo left, Amabara placed her head in her hands as she cried quietly to herself in the solitude of her office. She raised her head and looked at the black coin bag and cried even harder. Kami, forgive me, she whispered to herself as she slowly put the coin bag into her desk. Kami, forgive me. Deep in the forests of Water Country, October 13, 52 AFK. Naruto was wandering the forests of Water Country alone and cold. It had rained last night, and he wasn't able to find proper shelter in time before a downpour occurred. Well, he mumbled to himself while walking through the forest. It's been how many days, Kachan, Bachan? He asked the voices in his head as he continued his track through the woods. Well, Guppy, to my count it's been about 60 days since you and that girl were separated. I'm shocked that Hiruzen hasn't sent out any men to try and find you, Mito said as she drank her morning coffee on the couch in Naruto's head. 60 days? He screamed into the trees that towered over the now 4-year-old boy. How has it been that long? Well, it would seem that after you both initially got separated, her chakra wasn't detectable for you. That would make sense due to how extreme that explosion was. The residual chakra in the air would have made it very hard for someone like you to find her. Mito explained to the child who groaned into his hands. I need to find her, he exclaimed as he sat down and examined all the supplies he had left. Naruto was very glad that all of his supplies was stored in storage scrolls. If he had brought something like a backpack to the exams, he wouldn't have been able to grab it before the explosion. He still had all of his scrolls on him, and most of them were still full. He had 25 kunai, 35 shuriken, and 20 feet of ninja wire. He has all of his sealing supplies and clothing. The only thing he didn't have a large amount of was food. He had to hunt for all 3 meals since he had used up all of the food he had brought with him, since he didn't think he would be gone for nearly 65 days. Naruto put away all of his supplies and continued to walk down the trail he had found. He had been walking a normal pace so that he could try and have a better shot at sensing anyone that was in a 5-mile radius of him. Right now, however, all he could find were animals. Ugh, this is gonna take forever. He groaned in frustration as he continued to walk. Well, it could be worse. You could be injured, Mito reminded the child who face-palmed. Ba-chan, you're not helping, he said to his grandma who chuckled in his head. Hi, she said with a smile on her face. I'm just trying to make you laugh, Guppy. Well, he immediately froze when he sensed people off to his left. Once he was able to confirm that they weren't ninjas, he started to tree-hop towards them to try and catch up to them. Now Naruto remembered to be careful. Mito reminded the boy who nodded his head in agreement. It's been a very long time since I've been in this part of Water Country. It took Naruto 20 minutes to reach the people who he had initially. He finally stopped to find them. He noticed that it was actually a wagon being pulled by 2 horses. He decided that he needed a closer look, so he hopped to another branch, and noticed that there was a group of people in the wagon as well. After a few moments of observing the group, he figured out that it was actually a family of 5. There was women who he estimated to be around 35 years old. She had dark red hair with green eyes and was around 5 feet 7 inches. She was wearing a pink dress with a purple belt around her curved belly, showing that she was in the middle of a pregnancy. The man he noticed looked to be around the age of 40. He had blonde hair with streaks of gray and blue eyes. He looked to be 5 feet 10 inches and had very strong beefy arms. He wore black trousers and a dark blue cotton shirt which was stretched over his chest and arms. The oldest was a boy with red hair and blue eyes like his father. Naruto observed that the boy looked to be around the age of 10. He wore green trousers and a brown long-sleeve shirt. The second oldest was a girl with strawberry blonde hair and eyes like her father but wore a light blue dress with black flats. She was around 4 feet 3 inches and was 7 years old. The youngest was a little boy not much older than Naruto. He looked to be around 5 years old. He, like the rest of the children, had strawberry blonde hair. He had green eyes and wore a white shirt and red pants. Minato? Kushina? Akari mumbled quietly to herself as she looked at the couple that Naruto was watching from the trees. What did you say, Kaa-chan? Naruto asked internally as he continued to watch the family, as they walked down the path. Nothing, Kit, just keep watching them, she said as she reminisced about memories. Naruto shrugged his shoulders as he continued to watch the family. After a few moments, he decided that he needed to make his presence known to the family and figure out if they knew where Hinata was. Road in water country. Igaji-kun, it feels like someone's watching us, the woman said as she looked over her shoulder for the 5th time in the last 20 minutes. Rikono-chan, it's provably fine. No one is in area. It's just the baby getting to your head, the grizzly man said with a wave of his hand. Mama! Look in the road, the little girl called out while waving her finger. Igaji looked at where his daughter was pointing to and saw the small blonde child standing in the middle of the road. A boy! He shouted as he stopped the wagon that his family was on. What are you doing in the middle of the road? I'm sorry! Naruto apologized with a bow. I'm trying to find a friend of mine and I can't find her. Have you seen her? Naruto asked as he fumbled with his hands. He looked at the mother who instantly swooned over him. Oh sweetie, why are you out in the middle of these woods? Rikono asked the boy who shrugged his shoulder. We were running from Kikirigakure because of the bad stuff that was happening there. We got separated and I've been looking for her ever since, Naruto explained on the verge of tears. Kid, what were you doing in Kirigakure? The last I heard it was in a total lockdown? Igaji asked the child with a raised eyebrow. There hasn't been any news from the hidden village in a little under 2 months due to whatever happened during the Chunin exams. We were taking the Chunin exams and we got split up. Can you help me? He cried to the family who looked at him with raised eyebrows. You a ninja? Igaji laughed at the boy who glared at him with tears on his cheeks. Kid, you look like you can't even open the pickle jar, he said as he continued to laugh. What good is a pipsqueak like you gonna do as a ninja? Naruto growled at the man who continued to laugh at him. He then proceeded to make 3 copies of himself with no hand seals. He and his clones then proceed to annihilate the surrounding trees with fireball jutsus. Igaji and his family were amazed at the abilities that Naruto had. Does that prove it? Naruto growled out as his clones disappeared into thin air. Yeah, kid, Igaji replied with a smile. Now you were talking about a girl? Naruto eagerly nodded his head, waiting with bated breath for any news the man would have. Igaji rubbed his chin in deep thought as he thought about anything having to do with a girl. Wait! Naruto looked up at Wagon and saw that the little girl was talking. He looked at her with wide eyes and a smile. Have you seen my friend? He asked her, to which she nodded her head. Rikichi-chan, how do you know this kid's friend if you have no idea what she looks like? Igaji asked the girl who smiled at her father. Some of the men were talking about how they got a girl in the woods, she said with a large smile on her face. Wow, she gasped. I guess her running off and eavesdropping actually did some good for once. Rikono exclaimed with a sweat drop on the back of her head. Thank you so much. Do you know where they were taking her? Naruto excitedly asked the girl who shook her head. No, I'm sorry, I didn't hear it. All I had was girl with pretty eyes was found in the woods, Rikichi said with a frown on her face. Naruto looked at the man who shrugged his shoulders. Well, that's all we know, kid. I hope you find your friend, the patriarch of the family said with a kind smile. Thank you, Naruto called to the family before taking off down the road. Guppy, don't forget to ask where they heard that news from, Mito yelled from the couch in Naruto's head. Naruto immediately stopped running and asked the family where they had heard. They told him that the town was about a 1.5 days walk. Naruto once again thanked the family and started running in the other direction. Once the family was out of both sight and earshot, he channeled chakra thought his body and held up the ram hand seal. Full body resistance seals KI. Immediately, all the resistance and gravity seals that were on Naruto's body were released. He was quite shocked at how light he actually felt when he pivoted from one foot and the other. Naruto smirked to himself as he sprinted away towards the village. It wasn't until midday when Naruto found the first hurdle in his plan to rescue Hinata. He had only been running for about 3 hours when he sensed 3 Chunin-level ninjas in the trees. Ugh! I don't have time for this, he groaned to himself as he sped off towards the ninjas so that he could determine if they were a threat to him or not. Naruto once again found himself on a tree branch looking at a group of 3 Kirigakure ninjas sitting on stumps eating cooked fish. The man sitting closest to Naruto was around 5 feet 8 inches, had gray hair and a scar across his cheek. He wore the standard Kiri ninja uniform consisting of gray vests with vertical stripes on them, black pants with ninja pouches tied at their waists, and blue ninja sandals. The man in the middle was a 5 feet 2 inches, thin man with balding brown hair. He wore a brown vest over a long-sleeved white shirt, and black pants. The third was the tallest of the group, standing at about 6. He wore a gray coat and black pants. "Hey Rikizaka-san, what do you think the boss is gonna do with that haul we brought up to Iwamoto Cove?" asked the man in the gray coat. "I think he'll be pleased that we brought him so many exotic catches." The man in the uniform, now identified as Rikizaka, replied nonchalantly. "Plus Kanashima-san over here found us one of those famous hyugas that everyone always wants." "Yeah." The short man name identified as Kanashima shouted with a fist pump. She looked so tired and frail that it was easy to capture her. "Man, I'm sure she's gonna be a real looker when she's older too." Rikizaka said, a disgusting smile on his face. "Banabu-san, you think she'll even make it to puberty?" he asked while glancing at the tallest member of the group. "She has too. Everyone wants to be a Kugen, and they'll do anything to keep one." Banabu replied nonchalantly with the wave of his hand. "She's definitely going to make it past puberty. They're gonna be fucking her the very day she starts growing some TI." That was the last thing he said before a kunai was seen, flying through the back of his head and out his eye. Bonobua and Rikizaka immediately jumped to their feet and drew their weapons. They went back to back and started to frantically look around to try and find who the person who killed Kanashima was. They then heard some rustling in the trees and bush, but when they looked, all they saw was a bunny rabbit. "What the fuck?" Bonobua asked as he looked at the rabbit. "There's no way that a rabbit killed Kanashima." "That's because it wasn't the rabbit, you fucking idiot." Rikizaka facepalmed at the sheer stupidity of his partner. But there's no one here," Bonobua shouted as he tried to find the person. "Kunai just don't go flying out of fucking trees." "What's next, they start talking to us?" Rikizaka asked sarcastically to his partner, who was still shaken up. Naruto had been watching the scene unfold for a few minutes before he got tired of it, and decided that now was the time to make his presence to the ninja known. He hopped down from his branch and held out 2 kunai in a reverse grip. "Tell me where the girl is." Rikizaka looked at Naruto and laughed. Usually he was a very reserved guy who barely let out any emotion other than sarcasm, but when he saw this toddler holding kunai like a ninja, he couldn't do anything other than laugh. "Kid, what are you doing here?" "We're looking for someone who killed our friend," Bonobua quietly shouted while pointing at Naruto. "Tell me where the girl you were just talking about is, or else I'll do much worse than what I did to your friend." Naruto calm stated to the 2 men who merely raised their eyebrows. "You?" Bonobua asked the child who growled at him. "You killed a Chunin?" He then proceeded to mimic his partner, and let out a deep belly laugh. "I don't have time for this," Naruto angrily thought as he held up the ram hand seal. He then channeled chakra through his body and smirked. "Bring down the thunder." As soon as Naruto uttered the words of his signature jutsu, a single bolt of low-powered lightning shot down from the sky and hit Bonobua. While the tall ninja was distracted, Naruto went on the offensive and sprinted towards Rikizaka, who wasn't expecting the small child to be able to move at such speeds. "This should be over quickly," Rikizaka said confidently as blocked one of Naruto's swipes. He then backpedaled up to a tree and kicked Naruto in the chest. "Yeah, for you." Naruto went through 3 seals and cupped his hand over his mouth in the form of a cone. Fire style, giant fireball jutsu. 3 fireballs launched from Naruto's mouth towards the Kiri ninja, who went through his own SD of hand seals. He smirked at the boy as he took in a deep breath through his nose. Water style, roaring waterspout jutsu. Rikizaka blew out a stream of bright blue water that clashed with Naruto's fireballs. Once the collision occurred, a large cloud of steam started to rise in the clearing. Naruto smirked and activated his Sharingan so that he could still see through the steam. He then felt the air move on his left side due to his whiskers, so he dodged. "Wow, you're a tricky one." Bonobua spat as he tried to punch Naruto while his back wasn't towards him. "All you have to do is tell me where the Hyuga is and I can let you go," Naruto yelled out as he dodged another punch from Bonobua. The man laughed as he tried to kick the boy who dodged his kick. "We aren't telling you jack shit, kid," the man said as he threw some shuriken at the boy who dropped to the ground to avoid them. "Fine. I guess you want to do this the hard way," Naruto said as he went through 6 hand seals and slammed his hands on the ground. Earth style, headhunter jutsu. Naruto sunk into the ground and started to move towards his biggest threat, Rikizaka. Once he found the man, he grabbed onto the man's legs and brought him into the group. He wasn't expecting Naruto to attack from under him, so he didn't have time to react. While underground, Naruto slit his throat with a kunai. Once the man was dead, both bodies shot out of the ground. Naruto looked at Bonobua with his Sharingan active and put him into a hypnosis genjutsu 1. "Tell me where she is," Naruto shouted as he dashed towards the now hypnotized ninja who didn't make any move to stop the boy. "Iwamoto Cliff," the man said in an emotionless tone. Naruto glared at him, to which the man simply looked down at him. "Where is that?" Naruto asked the man who pointed in a direction. "It's about 27 miles north by northwest," You'll know you're getting close when the trees start thinning and the ground gets more and more rocky, he answered in the same neutral tone. Thank you, Naruto said as he sent a kunai into the man's jugular. He then took off in the direction that Binojo pointed him to go in. Something inside of him knew that he needed to go fast. That he needed work harder. He needed to fulfill his promise to Hitomi. He needed to get her back. Without even noticing, Naruto sped up to just beyond his maximum speed even while channeling chakra without his weights. He was going to get Hinata back. No matter what it took. Naruto seal. Akari and Mito watched the fights that Naruto were in with very serious expressions on their faces. Once he took off towards the cove, Mito turned to a deathly serious Akari and frowned. You know, she said as she poured herself some tea from a pot on the table. He's scarily like Minato and Madara, she said before taking a sip of her tea. What do you mean? The fox asked with a raised eyebrow. Naruto is a perfect mixture of Kushina's determination and Minato's ruthlessness. Sure, he could be cute, nice, and relatively harmless. But like his father, Minato's wrath was second to none, and his revenge could be both quick and effective, or slow and messy. There's a reason why he became Hokage, Mito explained to Akari, who nodded her head still confused. Mito, I still don't understand what you're getting at. Akari, did you see how effectively Naruto took down those men? She asked again as she took a sip of her tea with a raised eyebrow. Yeah. He took down the targets, got the intel, and left no trace. He actually did a really good job, Akari commented while taking a sip from her glass of white wine. Yeah, a little too well. Mito commented to the women sitting next to her. Naruto is a 4-year-old who's a killing machine. He didn't need to hypnotize and kill that ninja. Hell, it was within his power to get that information from them without even using a single attack. Mito exclaimed while setting her cup down onto the table. Akari, I don't think you'd get it since you're not a mother. But right now, Naruto is starting down a path that could lead to a lot of bad things. She frowned while taking another sip of her tea. I think that he'll be fine, she said confidently with a smile. I mean, we're gonna be there to help guide him, right? I believe in us, and I defiantly believe in Hiruzen, and Hitomi, and especially Mikoto. You know, Mito stroked her chin with her fingers. I've always gotten a weird feeling about him. I mean, don't you think it's a little strange that he hasn't sent any search or rescue parties after Naruto? The Jinchurki of the village, along with some of his other decisions he's made, she said calmly as she watched Naruto run through the woods. Akari was getting slightly uncomfortable with what Mito was saying, so she decided to change the topic to something else. Do you think Naruto can keep this pace up? Mito glanced to her left in the living room and saw 2 colored status bars. The red one is his energy level, which showed how much energy and stamina he had left. The blue one was his chakra level, which showed how much chakra Naruto was losing or gaining. Meh, she replied while calculating the amount of chakra and stamina Naruto had left. He's got about 40% stamina left, and 70% of his chakra left, so he should be fine, but he could be getting into some fights later when he finds Hinata. And I can also supply. No. Akari turned her head to give the elderly lady a raised eyebrow. What do you mean no? You'll destroy his body if you give him any of your chakra. His body simply can't handle that kind of stress. It's barely coping with the resistance seals and the training that he's been doing. Children this young aren't supposed to be training, running, at fighting like this. Mito gave Akari a sharp glare as she deflated any argument she had vanishing. I just hope he gets out of this in one piece. Woods of Water Country. Naruto was pushing himself to the absolute to get to Hinata as fast as possible. It had taken him nearly 2.5 hours to get to where the man said that the rocks would start to change. He had been observing the trees and his surrounds while he was running, but now he was able to see what the man had been talking about. All throughout the woods there were different kinds of trees, like some weeping willows, red maples, river birch, and overcup oak were always present due to the wet and cold climate that Water Country was known for. He also noticed the birds and deer that were always around. He had been hunting rabbits, deer, and raccoons. Now, there were a lot less trees and a lot jagged rocks. He also noticed that he was going uphill for at least half the time he was running. While he always enjoyed a nice run, the constant running was starting to get to him. I have to do it for Hinata, he thought as he pushed himself even harder. After another 25 minutes of running, he finally sensed other people walking in the cliff face. He smiled when he felt her and subsequently sped up to try and get to her faster. When Naruto finally got out of the woods, he ran into a flat grassy clearing that had a few bushes dotted around it. He took a look around and noticed that there was a very sharp drop-off at the end of the clearing. Those must be the cliffs, he thought to himself. What he didn't know was that they weren't just any cliffs. There were cliffs that were 750 feet tall and had jagged rocks at the bottom. Naruto took a minute to catch his breath before he tried to locate Hinata. He turned his head and found her among 20 other girls of varying ages and races. There were 10 guards walking next to and near or then. All of the guards were wearing black pants and ninja shoes with gray long-sleeved shirts. They all had multiple ninja pouches on their thighs and hips. Alright bitches, get in line so we can count ya. One of the guards yelled, which immediately caused all the girls to go rigid. Naruto observed the condition of the girls and he was stunned. All of them looked skinny and pale. His eyes tried to find Hinata, and when he saw him he nearly blew his cover. Hinata had terrible bags under her eyes, bruises and scratch marks on her face and neck, and was walking with a limp. Naruto could also make out that she was shaking as well. One of the girls, a young blonde-haired girl, fell to the ground and started coughing up blood. She looked to be around 10 or 11 and was wearing a poncho-like shirt with brow pants. "Get up!" One of the guards yelled at the girl, who merely whimpered. "Boss, this one isn't getting up." He shouted to the man at the front, who shrugged his shoulders. "Kick her over the edge," he yelled from the front of the line. The man nodded his head and kicked the girl over the side of the cliff. Her screams could be heard for a few seconds before they were silenced by the roaring sounds of the water below. Naruto locked eyes on Hinata as he formulated a plan to try and rescue his first and only plan. After a few seconds of thinking, he smirked to himself. He kicked a pebble over to where Hinata was standing, praying that it was crossed the estimated 30 feet, 9.1 meters, between them. He was thankful when she looked up at him, and her eyes widened. Naruto held up a thumbs up and smiled at her. He then turned towards the guard that was at the back of the line. He grabbed one of the shuriken that was in his pouch and threw it at the man. The guard wasn't paying attention and got it lodged in his throat. "Grr!" he shouted as his throat was filling with blood. The commotion caused all of the guards to go on alert and start grabbing girls that were deemed valuable. Naruto groaned when the leader of the guards grabbed Hinata by the wrist. "Well, this just got a lot harder, ninja!" one of the men shouted as they took up defensive positions. Some of the guards started throwing shuriken and kunai into the woods. Naruto dodged them and shined to the open field above the cliff. "Let my friend go!" he yelled at the leader, who raised an eyebrow at him. "And who are you to tell me what to do?" he yelled while dangling Hinata above the ground. "Give me my friend and I won't hurt any of you!" Naruto yelled as he raised his hands in the air while slowly walking over to Hinata, who was thrashing around in the guard's arm. Naruto felt the air shift and ducked a fireball coming from behind him. He then has to jump when he sensed someone under him. Once Naruto was back on his feet, he started going through hand seals, finally landing on the boar seal. Wind style, giant whirlwind jutsu. Out of Naruto's mouth came a large gale of wind which knocked some of the guards back, giving the child enough time to get to Hinata. When he finally reached the girl, he punched the leader in the stomach, which forced him to stumble backwards. "You little brat!" he yelled as he glanced at the other 8 guards, who were either trying to recapture some of the girls who had ran away due to not being bound, or were running towards Naruto and himself. "You'll learn to never mess with the Order of Gargoyles." 3. He then proceeded to quickly kick Naruto in the stomach, which caused the boy to keel over and lose his breath. The leader didn't let up and he tried to kick Naruto in the head while he was on the ground. Naruto was able to feel the movement of air through his whiskers and dodged downward kick. He then landed a sweeping kick which caused the man to back up in order to avoid getting hit. The leader glanced over his shoulder and smirked. "You said you want your friend?" he asked Naruto, who glared at him. He didn't, however, notice that Hinata was dangling over the edge of the cliff. "Naruto, he's gonna drop Hinata!" Akari and Mito screamed from inside of his head. He, however, was too late to try and get to the man before he let go of Hinata. All Naruto heard for a moment was the shriek of Hinata falling over the cliff. He took one last look at the leader of group before he sprinted towards the cliff and jumped over after Hinata. "Naruto!" she screamed as she plummeted towards the jagged, rocky bottom. She was trying to orient herself but was failing miserably. "Hinata!" he screamed as he reached out his hands in a desperate attempt to save her. "I can't let her die," he thought as he plummeted towards the rocky bottom. "I can't lose her. I can't let her die. I won't let her die. I will save her." Suddenly Naruto felt his chakra draining from his body. He looked at his stretched out arm and noticed that cream-colored chains were shooting towards Hinata. They had a strange glow to them as they shot through the air, chasing after the girl. If Naruto strained his eyes, he could see that something was at the end of the white mystical chain. 4. It looked to be a small white claw, but Naruto didn't care. All he cared about was saving Hinata. All he cared about was being reunited with his best friend. It didn't matter to him how he did it, just that he made it happen. What if Uzumaki clan finds Naruto council bashing harem part 3? And thanks for watching my video till the end. If you enjoyed this content, then do consider subscribing to my channel, and leave a like if you guys need the next part. Comment down, and thanks for watching the video, and see you guys in the next video.